Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of my podcast. This week, we're joined by Doctor Who YouTuber Tharries. If you find yourself enjoying today's episode at any point, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe and share, or check out my Patreon. It really helps me out a lot and allows me to keep these videos coming. But let's just dive straight in. Welcome to the podcast, Tom, or Tharries. Saying Tom feels wrong.
It feels wrong. So, for context, we've known each other at this point for, I want to say, properly about 3-4-ish years. It was COVID era, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was COVID era. Was it 2021? Something around then.
We spoke in 2020, but I think we first met properly in 2021, I want to say.
Yeah, it was 2021.
Which was June, which was the first, I remember it, the first time was June. We all went on a trip together, a bunch of us.
And I should clarify as well with this Tom Tharries debate, the parents of people within our group only know him as Tharries, so that's become his name. Everyone's just like, it's Tharries. There's no Tom. It's not Thomas. No. It is Tharries. This is the Tharries.
It's one of my favourite memories of the trip, and obviously, like, it was. I think I don't remember where we were, but we were at someone's house. I don't want to dox anyone. Yeah. And their mum just came up, like, because we were in the garden, because I don't think I could get in the house, and they were just like, "Oh, hi, Tharries," and I was like. Oh yeah, well, I guess that makes sense.
No,
sure.
And there was a point as well where I think it was your mum and brother bumped into half of us in town, and like you were with the other half of the group.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, are you friends of Tom?" And everyone was just like, "Who?
Tom?"
You're like, "Tom."
I've got nothing.
No. And she was like, Tom Tharries, and we were like, "Oh yes, he's over there." But yeah, let us know in the comments. Actually, should we refer to this wonderful man as Tom or Tharries? Which is the real one?
Do a Zendaya and just one word. That's all it is.
Just Tharries.
Just Tharries.
But yeah, anyway, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Is still as of yet unnamed. It will probably be named by the time this podcast goes out. In the title, there'll probably be a really cool name, or it'll just say Joe Street Podcast or Confused Adipose Podcast, and I'll have failed fundamentally to come up with something creative. But you as an audience will know.
Creativity's dead. It's fine.
I've just had a thought. We're just spitballing here. The Addy Podcast.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but yeah.
I mean, it was your suggestion.
I was filled with immediate regret upon saying those words.
Well, I'm a guest, so I wanted to be nice, but Addy Podcast
is it's not the best suggestion.
It's one of the titles of all time, I think.
But anyway, we'll get back on topic because today we are here to discuss. Number one, leaks. Not any leaks that will leak things, but Doctor Who leaks, because that's kind of what you're known for. Well, that was like your rise to fame in the Doctor Who universe. How did that all happen?
It was largely like just kind of by accident. Like, obviously, I'd been doing videos for a while before all that happened, and I was on about 3,000 subscribers, and like I just couldn't get. Like, I just couldn't get, like, a new audience. I had, like, a small group of people who were there.
Yeah, a dedicated, loyal fan base.
Yeah, but I wasn't growing particularly. And I was like, okay, what can I do that, like, gets people's interest? And on an off chance, like, I was just, like, see what's being discussed on Reddit, Doctor Who-wise. And then I just started seeing this whole world, because obviously this was, like, pre-Flux era. And we knew next to nothing about it. That was before, like, the Comic-Con panel that happened, before Russell's announcement. This was, like, early 2021, sort of late 2020-ish sort of time, where we knew basically nothing. We'd seen, like, the occasional filming picture, but obviously, because it was COVID times then, they weren't filming outside as much. So this entire series was kind of just up in the air. And so there was just this whole cottage industry that sort of emerged of people just kind of typing out random things on Reddit as leaks, and some of them ended up somewhat accurate, others were completely incorrect.
Well, I mean, we'll discuss more of the ones that were and weren't accurate later. But I'd say, didn't the whole leak thing began with Ace Creeper, who is now just George Sheared as a channel?
I will say, like, I think if you look back at like my earliest videos in terms of like the leak stuff, I think there's a very direct correlation between like early Ace Creeper, George Sheared kind of when he was doing speculation and rumors and leaks on Series 11, and what I would then go on to do with Flux and going onwards, I guess. Like even like the thumbnails down to like the little question mark with the silhouette. And using kind of like recoloring costumes. One of the funniest things was before Series 14 came out, we had no other costumes for shooting, so you just had to recolor that one costume that we'd seen. So yeah, I think he was definitely. I mean, obviously there was probably leaks before then, but I think if you were to ask me where the direct kind of, I guess, ancestry of those videos was,
the DNA.
I would say, the DNA I would say is very much his, I think. And yeah, by off chance, I just did one. I was like, this sounds fun. I'll just read it and see what happens. And it got something like 16,000 views in a day, which for a channel with 3,000 subscribers was a lot. And I was like, oh, people like this.
we could do something with this.
Yeah, and
money.
And like a little, the little devil on the shoulder came in and was like, there's something to this. And there was just because obviously one of the things you got to know about me, and Joe knows this, I've got a very addictive personality. When I get into something, that's it. And so for a few months, all I was doing was just log on to Reddit, see what people are saying, making a video. It got to the point where people were putting in secret messages in the Reddit leaks that were saying, if Tharries is reading this.
Actually, you've just reminded me, I don't know if I still have the footage, but I was going to make a video called Tricking Tharries or something. And I have footage somewhere. If I can find it, I'll put it in this video. It's me, Amy, Alistair, and I think like Sally or someone. These are people from like a Doctor Who Discord server we have. But we were all in this Discord call about 2 a.m, slightly delirious, typing out this message like a leak for Doctor Who Flux. And the first letter of each line would have spelled out like Tharries stinks or something like that. And we were trying to get you to read it, but I don't think we ever actually posted it. I might have the footage.
If I have the footage,
I'll put it on screen somewhere because that would have been good fun.
I think Nerd Dad did something similar where he wrote one and then said I was the one who wrote one. It was, but the thing is, like a lot of people would sort of say like, oh, some of this is obviously not true. But for me, that was part of the fun of it. Yeah. Part of the fun was going, well, that's obviously not going to happen, or that could happen.
I remember doing, both of us, I think, did videos on this wild leak for the 60th way back, years ago, that was like, Shooty Gatwa is in his pants, and then all of it. And I remember reading it. I made a video going, what a load of rubbish. Like, there's two TARDISes, and Shooty's in his pants. And it was accurate. Yeah, every word of it ended up being accurate.
To be honest, right, I think that's sort of been one of the reasons why I've been less leak inclined of late is because of how accurate that one was, and also because I've broadly been I've been enjoying the speculation around like who Mrs. Flood is, what's the deal with all the rest of it. Obviously some of those things, the resolutions that we've had might not have been fantastic. We'll get into that maybe some point.
We'll get into that,
but I think I was enjoying that, and I think the idea of like finding it out on like one random day just kind of, it turned me off more. I think because we knew nothing about Flux, it just kind of created this space where you could just fill it in with whatever. Yeah. Whereas now, there's a lot more that we do know about the series. And obviously, back when I started doing the leaks and stuff, you didn't have these accounts like Doctor Who Filming Locations that would literally chronicle, the filming step by step. And obviously, it's a hugely useful resource for people like me and you. It's like, it's great.
It's great.
But obviously, obviously people have always gone to filming, but I think that account particularly is very like everything you need to know kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
I
so
think the only time where I don't do it in videos now is it is because of the 60th, because I didn't expect half of that stuff to fully be accurate. I thought
yeah,
maybe like little bits of it, but it spoiled so much of the
yeah,
60th, and
yeah,
it really like I try not to read plot spoilers. If it's
yeah,
like this person may be playing this role, I don't
yeah,
particularly mind. And if it's a small
yeah,
thing like, oh, Ruby may or may not have a relationship with this person, or I don't
yeah,
particularly mind.
yeah,
But when it's like a massive reveal or the
yeah,
bi-generation and stuff, that's
yeah,
where I try to steer clear of making videos about specific plot details.
yeah,
Because if it's
yeah.
little things, it's fun to know, but there's no point in ruining the entire story. That's kind of where I stand on
Yeah, I
leaks at the
completely
moment.
agree. And I also think, and this is my own personal like hot take with bi generation specifically, I don't know whether the response to that would have been as strong as it was if we hadn't had months to stew over it beforehand.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of people, and I think this about a lot of the 60th in general, I think a lot of people had made up their mind on what the 60th was months before it came out based on the plot stuff we already knew. And I think particularly with the bi-generation, I think some people went in knowing that idea was in it and already kind of having their opinion, their mind made up about
yeah.
whether they liked that idea or not. And I think if you were seeing it for the first time in the episode without knowing any of that, I wonder if it would have, maybe not gone over as controversially. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it would definitely have impacted just because the core fan base knew the plot twist of the 60th,
Yeah.
which yeah. But anyway, we'll get into more of those
Yeah, sure.
specific leaks later. But here we go, a smooth transition. Speaking of the 60th and the giggle, the Tharries ramp.
Oh,
Do you
yes.
want to tell the story of the Tharries ramp?
I
Because
can.
it's kind of insane, but it's very
It's
cool.
Yeah, it's a little bit mad. So the way like I found out was I got to go to the Star Beast, one of the Star Beast early screenings with I think it was Welsh BAFTA were hosting
Yeah.
it, I
Should
think.
we clarify what it is first in case people don't know?
What the Tharries Ren?
Yeah, because I mean it's pretty
Sure.
self-explanatory within the words, but
Yeah. Well, basically the ramp that you see in the giggle, I found out was put there specifically because of something that I said on a video, and it was colloquially referred to on set as the Tharries ramp, which is kind of insane, and it still brings you can see
very
me
cool.
smiling about it even now, just talking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a early screening with I think it was BAFTA Cymru that were doing like a screening of the Star Beast 2 days before it went out for general transmission. I want to clarify because a lot of people say these things. I've never once been invited formally by the BBC or anyone else to go to like an event.
Yeah.
When we saw Space Babies early,
That's
it
it.
was the same as that.
There were people on Twitter having this whole conspiracy theory
Yeah,
going, the confused Adipose and Tharries have been invited to this event. And I
yeah,
still get people messaging me going, how much do the BBC pay you to say nice
yeah,
things about
yeah,
them?
yeah,
They're not paying us. I
yeah,
genuinely enjoy this show. There's so
yeah,
many people out there. And you're probably some of you watching this video.
yeah.
We are not paid.
No,
Believe
and
me.
specifically
It would
with
be
like the
lovely.
events,
We're not.
every event I've gone to, I've either managed to get the tickets for because obviously with things like the BAFTA thing, it was like, oh, first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Put your email address in, you get a ticket, or I've paid for them. Like the Proms, for example, we got the tickets together. We bought them
Yeah.
with money. Like everyone
Yeah.
else. I wish, if ever they want me to be, at anything, I'm
Yeah.
happy to go. But I want to say right now, it hasn't happened yet. So everyone who says, well, you always end up with these early things, it's because I am sad and get the tickets.
We're Doctor Who fans.
Yeah.
We're just like you guys. We
Yeah.
want to go to these events.
Exactly. So yeah, I was at that anyway, and obviously watched the Star Beast early, which was a wonderful experience in and of itself. Just seeing like new Doctor Who and the first episode of the 60th
Yeah.
2 days early, even at just 2 days early, it's like there's that thrill of like, oh, this is this brand new Doctor Who being seen before anyone else. And obviously Russell was there in attendance. And afterwards there was like a little drinks reception. in this building outside the actual screening area. And there was this lovely guy who I think he works at Bad Wolf. Again, I don't want to dox him too much, but he was like a younger guy who said, "Oh, I watched your stuff and stuff. Would you like to be Russell?" Because obviously there was a like huge sort of crowd forming around him where he was in the sort of drinks reception.
You can imagine. I mean, at the Doctor Who proms, the amount of people in the interval that just swarmed Russell was insane.
It was insane. And like I read recently his Doctor Who magazine interview where he was like, he was saying how it was like a zombie film trying to escape before they all they all noticed him. And it's like, I can imagine. But yeah, so he sort of helped me wade through the crowd. So he'd shout out to him, otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to say hi to Russell. And he says, "Oh, Tharries, it's lovely to meet you." And already I'm like, what?
Sorry. He knows you.
Yeah, I'm like, what? And he said, "Oh, I heard what you said about the ramp, and stay tuned is all I'll say." And then he sort of said, like, in one of the episodes to come, you'll see something. And I sort of just had to keep my mouth shut about it until the giggle came out, and then obviously that happens, and then obviously I don't know, you might want to put a clip in. Ruth Madley mentions on, I think it's either the behind the scenes on YouTube for the giggle.
Yeah, she says it on quite a lot of different. I've heard it from multiple things.
Yeah, or Unleashed. It's one of those where she basically says, "Oh yeah, a fan got in touch with Russell and said like the ramp, they weren't sure as a kid whether they'd be able to get on it," and Russell was like, "We'll change that straight away." And I was that guy. So it's a lovely impact to have on things. And it's quite funny as well because coincidentally, shortly before the Star Beast aired, I was invited onto a podcast, BBC podcast, which was Access All Areas, which is kind of their main disability podcast, to like interview Ruth Madley. And one of the questions we asked is, have they done anything to the TARDIS to like make it, more accessible or whatever? And she was sort of saying to me, I had to try so hard not to say anything. So that was lovely. It's just a really nice thing because obviously it is true. That whole thing is true where I was little and I would see the little lip up to the TARDIS. And I know he's in a wheelchair and there was certain like sort of bumps and lips certain chairs can't get over or whatever it is, a lot. If you've ever been on any form of pavement in a wheelchair, it's a nightmare. So I was like, would the chair go up it? So I said that in a video once. I don't even remember what the video was, but clearly it got to Russell. Either he watched it or someone on his team watched it and he found out, and it got changed. And it's a really nice just a small little impact to make on the show. And I remember, I think the Mirror published something about the TARDIS being wheelchair accessible before that happened as well. So it had kind of been rumored for a while. So yeah, it's
very cool.
Have happened. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's mad. And the fact as well, the fact that Russell's just like, Tharries is wild. I want to meet one of the Doctor Who showrunners. That's my ambition at some point. Yeah. I've never met any. We were close at the Doctor Who proms. We almost met Stephen Moffat, but I didn't want to go, Stephen! Because he was like right in front of us. His wife, I think she's called Sue, she was lovely. She smiled. She could tell that we'd seen Stephen, but obviously there's Doctor Who fans everywhere. Yeah. You can't expect him to stop for everyone. But
exactly.
Yeah.
That was the thing as well, obviously at the halftime point, because we were sort of up on one of the higher levels of the proms and he was down below, and I remember you turned to me and being like, do I make a run for it to try and say hello? And I was like, you can try, I'm not sure whether you'll make it in time.
That's the thing. It was like, is it, but we wouldn't have made it. Like
I at least I wouldn't have. If you ran, maybe there's a chance I would have been been screwed, I think.
No.
But
yeah.
The proms, we should talk about that. The proms were good. We went together for that. That was good.
Yeah, it was good fun. It was the music. I don't know. It was just a great event, and I hope they do more big things like that because it really did have that like sense of community.
Yeah.
Which it sounds a bit waffly, but it's just lovely. Like, get all the Doctor Who community fans and everyone together.
Yeah.
And like, there were so many people there as well that I recognised from Twitter, and people that came up to us and said, "Oh, I really like your video." Like, that was lovely.
Yeah,
So thank you to everybody who came up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always lovely when that happens. I think it's just for a brief moment it felt like, we were back in 2008. You know what I mean? And like everyone was loving Doctor Who in that room, and the atmosphere was really lovely. And none of the horrible things that have happened in the world since mattered. It was just for those 2 hours. It was just a pure fan excitement thing for like 2 hours or so.
Do you remember afterwards? Because we went to get food, then we left. There was this random guy who was like a Facebook influencer or something.
Yes.
Who like ran up to us. So like we were with a small group of people, and he just runs up and he's like, "Oh, is the TARDIS here?" And we're like, "Oh, I think you've missed it. They're doing the second concert inside at the moment."
Yeah.
And this guy was just like, "Have you got any footage?" And I was like, "Well, I've got some footage on my phone." And I thought he was going to try and steal my phone. Because he was like, "Oh, could you show me the footage? Could you?" And I was like, "Why do you need?" And I was like, So I was very cautious.
And he was like, "Can I hold the phone?"
Yeah,
and we
that's
were like,
the thing. I very cautiously got my phone, and he was like, "Can I hold it?" And I was like, "No, no, you cannot." And I was like, "You can see the footage from a distance, but I'm not handing you my phone." So he then starts filming it on his phone, like in the Facebook app. He's filming from a distance my phone screen's footage of the Doctor Who prongs, and then he turns the camera around to his face, and he's like, "Oh, the audience are gonna love this. They're gonna love this." And then he like runs off, and he like jumped over some sort of like mini wall. It was
kind of insane. It was sort of like he was like a weird hybrid between like Mr. Beast and Darman. It was kind of bizarre. It was like the
cursed imagery there.
And like he was a massive Doctor Who fan as well. It was such a weird experience. He was a lovely guy, but he was mad as a box of frogs. Like
he seemed friendly. The footage might be out there somewhere. If you scour Facebook, I have no idea who this guy was. But
you might find us just looking absolutely bewildered, wondering,
"Can I hold your phone? Can I hold your phone?" No, you cannot hold my phone. You can stand there and I'll show you the footage, but you're not holding my phone.
For context, because obviously we stayed around for like when the second half was going on, because like we were talking to people and stuff. There weren't that many of us outside. So it was just like a group of 4 or 5-ish of us.
It was hours after, because we'd gone to get food. Like we'd had food in the restaurant thingy in the venue.
Yeah.
Then we'd come outside, and it was, I think there was a group of 4 or 5 of us, and it was just us. Everyone else was getting in for the second concert. And this guy just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, but it was quite like, especially because you're like when you're in London as well, you're like, anything could happen here. Like anything. Yeah. Anything could happen here, but luckily it was fine. But the problems themselves, I thought, fair play. I hope they do more of them, because it was like, as you said, just a really nice experience.
It was fantastic stuff. But anyway, let me look at my notes and smoothly transition into what I've got written down next.
Sure.
We're going to take a break from Doctor Who. This is a common theme of this podcast. These podcasts aren't all about Doctor Who, just 95%.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about the other big thing in pop culture at the moment, which is seemingly going right downhill. Marvel. Do you care about Marvel at all anymore?
I think I've spoken to you about this before. I care about certain characters still. So like, they make a Spider-Man movie, I'm going to be there day one, Likewise, I guess, if, like, for example, Fantastic Four, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
Yeah.
Likewise with, like, the X-Men, obviously, saw Deadpool, Wolverine. Hot take, I don't think Deadpool the Wolverine was all that. I thought it was good.
I loved it.
I thought it was good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was bad, but, like, the way people went on about it, like, I saw a tweet the other day being like, "Oh, Marvel are trying to get Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in consideration for Best Actor," and I'm like, come on.
Yeah, okay,
It's
that's a
good,
bit
but
extreme. It was a good. I think it's exactly what I look for out of a comedy, well, not like a superhero movie.
yeah,
Because I don't always like it when they take themselves too seriously. But
yeah.
films like The Batman, I appreciate they're really fun, and I do enjoy The Batman. But I love being able to just escape, turn my brain off. It's why Guardians of the Galaxy is some of my favorite superhero films. Like, there's still stakes, there's still drama, but a lot of it is just sort of comedy,
Yeah.
and that's my favourite type of superhero stuff. So I thought Deadpool and Wolverine, for what it was, because it's like a buddy cop movie, basically.
Yeah, mixed with like every
yeah.
reference you could think of.
But that,
under the
I
sun.
thought it was good fun. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes the other two Deadpool films, I'm not the biggest fan of, but like the fourth wall breaking, I think gets outdated very quickly. Like
Yeah.
if you go back and watch the first Deadpool, half of the like fourth wall break jokes are a bit dated now. And I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll be the same for this film.
Yeah.
But in that moment, a couple of months
I
ago,
guess
it was great
the
fun.
thing with Deadpool and Wolverine though as well is that like it's kind of the world he is in itself a massive fourth wall break. Like in the other films, they take themselves their universe is quasi, kind of static and kind of like it acts as a normal film would for the most part. Deadpool is not a normal protagonist, but the world he inhabits is largely, your average sort of superhero movie universe, in this one, it opens with him having an interview with Jon Favreau trying to join the Avengers, and being like, I want to be in the big leagues
One of
and
them.
and get all my spin-offs and merch and stuff. And I think an environment like that works well for a character like Deadpool. My concern though with that is that I worry that they are going to take the wrong lessons from Deadpool and Wolverine. And by which I mean they've gone, if we just bring back actors in roles that people know, it's just guaranteed to make $1 billion, no matter how much, no matter what the quality is.
That's the thing with Robert Downey Jr. coming back to play Doctor Doom. Like, I know all the stuff with Jonathan Majors and Kang and all that. That's out of their control. That's not Marvel's fault. But you could still do Kang. It's a multiverse.
Well, what I don't get is that they made it so that Kang could only ever be one actor. And I just don't know why you would do that for like a multiverse villain. It makes no sense to me. It'd be like going back into Doctor Who and saying that, oh, the Doctor can't regenerate anymore. And after this one, there can be no more Doctors. It's like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense.
It's a pointless rule. And also, but then also, I think the main problem, and it's why they have to keep bringing people back, is after like pre-Endgame, Steve Rogers and what's his name? Iron Man.
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark, there we go. People in the comments are going to get annoyed at that. Apologies. Those two and Thor were kind of that. They were the three big leagues. They were the three big players. Yeah,
to use the phrase.
Whereas now you've got like Spider-Man, but he's not really one of them. Like you don't have any leaders. Like they've all just sort of gone.
Yeah.
None of the new characters being set up, because you've got Doctor Strange, but none of the new characters being set up. People care. Like no one cares about them enough.
Oomph, do they? They don't have the same impact as any of them, with the exception of the ones whose stories have already wrapped up. So, like the Guardians, for example. Like they probably do have a similar level of cultural influence as some of the Avengers team, but they've all gone. That story is done. I think Star-Lord's coming back, but other than that,
Star-Lord on his own, I don't.
It's not as.
They're a great team. It might not be bad. Like for all we know, it could be amazing.
And it's the same thing with the Doctor Doom thing as well. Like there is a way they could do it that would be really cool. There are ways you can make it so that Doctor Doom is impersonating Tony Stark to infiltrate his way into this universe and then kind of, screwing everything up. There's ways you could do it that would be interesting. I worry that they're just going to it's just going to be, it's Iron Man, but it's not
I love all the memes that are all over TikTok and everything of the I hate you 3000 or just rubbish dialogue that
it wouldn't
I wouldn't even
surprise
put it past Marvel to do.
That's the thing. I think that's what worries me is that how much of this is going to feel like a fanfic in the worst way.
Yeah.
How much of it is going to be like, what if Robert Downey Jr. came back, but he was like evil and Spy? Because I think as well that's another thing. Like the worry is that Spider-Man is going to have more of a relationship with Doctor Doom than like the Fantastic Four are, and you're sort of like that's like the equivalent of going, oh yeah, Wolverine has more of a relationship with the Green Goblin than Spider-Man does. You're like, what?
Yeah,
Doesn't really make sense.
It's just bizarre. Like the whole, I think Marvel really, really went wrong after Endgame. Like they should have set up
Hot take there.
Yeah,
no one said
no one's ever thought that before.
No.
I'm a man of originality.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, they needed to set up new. Well, they could still do it. Set up new characters that people properly care about because. Like the Marvels, like that completely flopped, and like I know Captain Marvel's a character that people do care about, but like I can't even remember the other two's names. I watched WandaVision and I watched Miss Marvel, but they were so sort of like meh.
I think that's the other thing as well. Most of the audience for the movies aren't going to sit down and watch the 8-episode TV shows every month. You know what I mean? Not everyone's that invested. The reason that Endgame made $3 billion, it wasn't the diehards who watched everything. It was most of the general public who had an awareness of most of it, i.e. Iron Man, Captain America, Thanos, who made that movie as big as it was. You can't just make a movie that big from diehard people who just watch everything.
I've always found fascinating about Infinity War and Endgame. Going into that, all I'd seen was, I think, a Spider-Man film, all of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and that may have been it going into Infinity War. But I knew, because it was so culturally relevant, I knew who Iron Man was. You get it. You see him, you're like, he's a cool millionaire. Iron suit, I get it. Captain America, oh okay, he's Captain America. Thor, oh it's the Greek god. Like you immediately sort of got it.
Yeah.
And I came into that and sort of started to love Marvel. I went back and watched all the old ones in the year between Infinity War and Endgame, and it really worked. But I think the characters now, they're just not like, I don't know, there's nothing to them. No. And I don't think that they need proper movies that explore these characters.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's
the same thing with like Star Wars, though. I've said to you before with like the Obi-Wan show should have really been an hour and a half long, 2-hour film. It would have been so much better as that.
Yeah, like they dragged it out for so long, and it annoys me because there's such good performances in there. Having Hayden Christensen back is so cool, and Ewan McGregor and the girl who plays like young Leia, like she's a surprisingly good child actress. Yeah. And I can't remember, is her name Reva? The apprentice.
Yeah.
Like I actually thought that character had a lot of like
potential there. Yeah, there's a lot there.
By the end, it's just sort of the show itself and the dialogue and just everything about like it didn't really hit. And how do you bring back Obi-Wan and make it not work? Like that should be a guarantee.
And Hayden Christensen as Vader as well. It's be
crazy.
Yeah, like I think that's a trend that I really dislike in a lot of like modern stuff is kind of the sort of tendency to just make TV shows into stretched out films.
Yeah.
I don't like I feel like TV has a very specific pace to it and style to it that you can't just sort of get a film and then chop it up and be like, there you go, it's a show.
Yeah, the worst offender for that is, did you watch the Book of Boba Fett?
Bits. I don't think I made it to the end.
Depending on how pedantic people will be. I always said Boba, like Boba.
I think I've always said Boba Fett, like Boba Tea.
That feels so American.
It does.
Like Boba Fett.
But then again, I guess it is American, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. But anyway, my point is, that show was announced. I'm pretty sure. I might be completely factually wrong, but I'm pretty sure that show was announced as a movie years back. Years and years before the show.
Which probably would have done all right, I imagine, because Boba Fett's like quite well recognised.
Iconography, you recognise him. There's not too much to even know. It's like the cool bounty hunter that has 5 lines in the original trilogy. That's all you need to know. His dad got his head chopped off by Mace Windu. It is what it is. movie. But instead, they made the most drawn-out TV show, and for some reason, episode 7 or 6 of it is just an episode of The Mandalorian with
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker in, and Luke doesn't even meet Boba Fett in his own show. It's such a mess. And while I'm having a rant, why on earth, after The Mandalorian season 2, Grogu, the whole point is, the Mandalorian started taking off his helmet, and Grogu is going to go and train with Luke. Not even in their own show did they decide to carry that on. In the next piece of Star Wars media, the Book of Boba Fett, they go, oh no, Yoda goes back with the Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian keeps his helmet on now because Pedro Pascal's expensive and doesn't really want to do this anymore. It's just mental, and it ruins the characters. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Star Wars, I'm very angry at you right now.
I struck a chord. Wow, I wasn't like. The thing is,
I think that is the biggest run I've ever had on this channel, but it needs to be out there because.
I'm a lot more of a casual Star Wars guy than you. Like, I'm a lot more in. Because it's kind of funny, we're kind of the inverse in that way. I like a lot of my superhero stuff, and you've always been more of the Star Wars one.
Wars-y,
and together we kind of like, piece it all together, I suppose. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Star Wars, but it's the sort of thing of like, I don't watch every show. It's like, if there's a show with a character that I like, much like what we were saying with Marvel earlier, I'll watch that, which is why I watched Obi-Wan, and was bitterly disappointed by Obi-Wan.
Yeah, it's just, it's sad. I don't get it. These are such easy shows to get the general public on board for, and they're just like, nah.
I think they just need to make,
throw it out
like,
there, content.
just do a completely new start with a fresh, like, movie, I think. Do something a bit new with it. Get someone with a proper, like, creative vision behind it,
to be fair,
and just let them do it.
That's Andor. Andor is the only Star Wars thing that has been successful, and that, like, critically at least, that people have gone, oh, that's good, because it is, like you say, he's technically not a new character because he showed up in Rogue One, but he basically is. It's like new character set within the universe we love, and people absolutely loved it. But instead, they're like, no, let's bring back Grand Admiral Thrawn from the Clone Wars or Rebels or whatever he's from, and he looks like Elon Musk but blue. That's another thing. Dreadful.
With half of the characters that they've been introducing, because they're from like the more expanded stuff, I'm sat there as like a casual person who mainly watches the films, going, who on earth are these guys? I don't know who these people are.
I've never watched Star Wars Rebels. When I was a kid, I used to watch Clone Wars, but there was this moment in the Ahsoka TV show. She doesn't need a TV show, by the way. But in the Ahsoka TV show, where this guy rocks up, like, really CGI alien-looking creature, and everyone on Twitter was going, oh my gosh, that's Zeb Bubba or whatever, and it was the most ridiculous name ever, and it's like, he showed up for 30 seconds in a bar for no reason, and
I think Star Wars has fully gone into that thing that Doctor Who can sometimes find itself in, where it becomes too insular. You know what I mean? Where it becomes so obsessed with itself that it sort of forgets that. And it's the same with Marvel in many ways, with the cameos and stuff as well. Like, the reason you appealed to a huge amount of people wasn't because they pointed at the screen and went, oh my God, it's Zeb from Rebels. You appealed because there was a simple story that the masses could connect to with some good characters in it and some cool visuals. That's what people came to Star Wars for in the first place. And like, I think that's the thing with Doctor Who as well. Doctor Who's a bit different because by design, it can kind of just completely change itself into something else. So it kind of avoids this problem, I would argue, more so than the others, because with something like, obviously, I guess you can reboot like the Marvel Universe as they're doing with DC, but fundamentally, a superhero movie has a certain formula to it that kind of has to stay the same. And I mean, Doctor Who has its own formulas, but it's a lot more malleable, I would argue, than most other franchises are. But yeah, with what was I saying? I completely missed it.
I have no idea where this started.
I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is with Star Wars and with Marvel as well, I think they need to just stop being so insular with everything, especially for people like me. It's like, I don't really care who these people are from 20-year-old shows, I get that some people do, and that's fine. And I'm not saying that they can't have shows for them, but I'm saying you're never going to get the average person on board until you start doing just normal stories that don't rely on, oh, it's this guy from
I think
thing.
This is the thing with Doctor Who season 1, the new Disney Plus stuff, that like the finale, bringing back Sutek is perfect.
Don't get me started.
It's a great idea. It's brilliant because introduce him as the god of death and all of that, and it's that's so cool. But you don't need to do the anagram thing. You don't need to have a memory TARDIS. You don't need to have someone watching it on a TV screen going, look, Ruby, this is my prior adventure. What are you doing? Because everyone who hasn't seen the Pyramids of Mars sits there and goes, why aren't I part of this exclusive club?
Yeah,
I want to.
I feel like I've missed something.
Exactly. You could introduce Sutek brilliantly. Like the anagram thing's quite fun, maybe, but you need to build him up. You need to hype it, like the Daleks. If they just came out of nowhere in the Series 1 finale with Eccleston, it would kind of be a bit like.
And they just have like screens showing Genesis of the Daleks. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't hit. And I think. Yeah, the thing is, what you were saying with Sutek is the only reason he's important is because he's existed before, you know, or at least that's kind of the implication you're left with as an audience member. Whereas conversely, to use a good example from this era where I actually thought a returning villain was utilized well, the Toymaker, you do not need to have seen his original story.
100%.
And I think they really well adapted him to like a New Who style. Obviously, you've got a bit of that like zaniness that like sort of the modern masters kind of have, but it's kind of also mixed with he's got like these changing sort of faces. He sort of puts on acts all the time. Like you're never fully sure where his head's at, like because sometimes he'll be doing the I accept your challenge, Doctor, the very British kind of quiet, calm thing, and then all of a sudden he'll turn into you like the game, 2 bottles.
I think the changing accents thing was so unique and fun as well.
But it works so well because it's like he's playing with the concept of language as a toy, and I think stuff like that, I'm like, that's a perfect sort of like remix or reinterpretation of a classic character.
It's also the introduction to that. Wasn't a hyped up moment of who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be?
No.
The Doctor walks in and you see on his face, he's like, Donna, get back to the TARDIS. And it's like, oh, okay. Then you get a really quick flashback of this is an established villain. We're doing it for the 60th. You get it. We get it. And the audience goes, oh, solid, nice. And then you watch it. I haven't even watched the original Toymaker story. Confession. Maybe I need to revoke my Doctor Who fan card.
I think it only recently got like fully animated. So before then, you'd have been watching like a telly snap and then part 4. I've seen part 4, which is the only bit that survives, which is actual footage. The rest of it is the telly snaps, which, to be honest, I know some people like telly snaps. I cannot deal with that.
This is what they really missed the trick of in the 60th was. I think Donna should have sat down and watched the telesnap reconstruction of the Toymaker on a screen, and then the audience would have understood. No,
I also think they should have had in the Star Beast the 14th Doctor reading the events of the comic book as it was going along, being like, "What do I do next? Let me just consult the guide." No, it's so strange with season 1 because in many ways. It's some of my favourite Doctor Who we've had in a while. There's episodes like 73 Odds and Boom and Dot and Bubble that I think these are some really good ideas with some really good execution and like some genuinely interesting themes and ideas that are being explored here. In Boom, obviously it's Stephen Moffat, so it's just layered with like good dialogue. But you've also got like all the sort of commentary around like religion and blind faith and all of this. And then it's 73 Yards. You've got all the just tons of messages you can take out of that, and just like the eeriness of it, like is really, really cool. And then Dot and Bubble, obviously, you've got all like the races and stuff. A lot of it's really well done, but then simultaneously you have these episodes that just sort of don't feel quite as sure of themselves.
Yeah, well,
it's weird.
It's too experimental for a season 1.
Yeah.
Like, series 1 of Doctor Who with Eccleston had such a sort of consistent tone, and all the characters had really clear journeys, and it was so lovely to watch like the Doctor and Rose grow and develop, and they bickered all the time.
Yeah.
Like Father's Day when they're shouting at each other. It's so good. But instead, Ruby and the Doctor have just been happy throughout the entire series.
Yeah.
And especially when you've only got 8 episodes, I know it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
But having Shooty absent for 2 of them was insane.
Yeah.
Like, we've basically got a new Doctor who's had 6 episodes, of which barely any character development happened. Also, don't even get me started on the whole debacle of the Devil's Cord having a 6-month time jump, and then Russell going, actually, it wasn't a 6-month time jump. It was to explain Sarah Jane's... Like, what?
Yeah, it's to explain Sarah Jane's time dilation in Pyramids of Mars. Like, that just makes it... But, like, and he's like, oh, only... I think his quote was, only people who are, like, obsessed with Doctor Who discourse are going to think that 6 months has passed. And you're sort of like, what is the other interpretation normal people are going to have of that?
Like but this is what I don't understand.
Christmas, and then she's in June. What else are you supposed to take away from that?
I don't get it, because Russell T Davies is genuinely... He's one of my favourite people. Like, I love the man. I absolutely love him. And he is the reason, or one of the reasons, that I am a Doctor Who fan. He's the reason this channel exists. The stuff he wrote for New Who was brilliant. Like, amazing. Series 4 is genuinely one of the best pieces of television to ever exist. So how has he sometimes, in interviews, decided to go... Well, the whole talk as well, where he was like, oh, my headcanon is that when the bi-generation happened, every other Doctor bi-generated. And, like, what's he saying? Half of what he says, just in those interviews, just doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, because he is such a good writer. Like, It's a Sin is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, the character work in it as well. It's amazing. And there's so many other things that he's written. Like Bob and Rose. I love the character work in that.
Years and years is fantastic.
Yeah, years and years. Apart from the final episode, I'm not a fan of that.
To be fair, that's just Russell finales all over there, isn't it? Like, again, it's kind of like, oh, everyone, get your screen out.
We'll save the day in 5 minutes, but then do something sad with the characters.
It always comes back to screens as well. Years and years ends with, like, everyone look at what's going on.
Just watch it on the screens.
Yeah, no.
I don't get it.
Season 1 is frustrating for me, because I think a lot of people say, that's one of the worst Doctor Who we've ever seen. And I'm like, no, I don't think it is. I don't even think it's close to the worst series we've ever had.
It's not even close. It's great. Like, so much of season 1 is great fun.
Yeah.
Like Space Babies, while a bizarre choice for an episode 1, it's so, like, Shooty and Millie in that are electric. And I don't think they ever get better than Space Babies. It's so fun.
I've never got why people say it's like one of the worst episodes, because I'm sort of like, they're like, oh yeah, but it's, it's really kiddie and childish and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but also Russell's always kind of done that. Like, New Earth is a body swap episode with a skin flap in it, where the Doctor's going, oh, I'm a little bit foxy. In his first debut adventure. And likewise with something like the Slitheen two-parter in Series 1. You've got Annette Badland going, I'm shaking my booty.
I think you kind of got away with it more back then. Because one, it was the early 2000s. So that was for the standard of TV there. But 2, you had 14 or 15 episodes a year.
Yeah.
Like, when you've only got 8 episodes, of which there's only really 6 because Shooty's not available, which, as I say, that's no one's fault. But you've got to utilise character drama properly. Yeah. Like, even Ruby's family, there's so much potential there. But they don't do anything.
No, that's the weirdest aspect to me about season 1, is that, like, Russell's character development has always been, like, his strength, his strongest attribute. And there just isn't a lot of it in season 1. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that the Doctor and Ruby don't have characters, because they do. I think the characters themselves are quite well defined, in the sense of, I know how they act in most situations. I know what they're going to do, what they're going to say, so forth. That's not the issue. It's the fact that from when we meet them to the end, that stays the same. There's no evolution beyond, we're 2 best friends having a real good time, and we're both adopted.
There's so many times where Ruby should have had a go at the Doctor, or the Doctor should have had a go at Ruby. And you get, the only moment I can actually think of is in Boom, when they're on the
Yeah.
landmine, and he's like, I'm going to be very cross at you if you do this. That's the only sort of tension
Yeah.
between. How does Ruby not have a go at him for traveling back in time to see, like, save her as a baby, and he saw her mum, and she never asks him. She's never like,
Did you
why
not?
didn't you
Why
say
did you
anything?
not go up? Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
well, Ruby's mum, like, she doesn't seem to give a crap that Ruby's
No.
in life's in danger. Actually,
And also
Ruby doesn't
with-
care that Ruby's life's in danger.
And also
Ruby
with-
dies twice
Yeah.
and never goes, look, mate, I've just died. She's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm back. I'm alive.
Yeah, and also with that as well, with what you were saying about Carla, the mum, like you could have done a thing where she was kind of, you know, maybe a bit like uncertain about her wanting to know more about like her real mum.
Yeah.
Maybe she kind
Yeah.
of, or as she calls her real mum, maybe she could be a bit hurt by that. Maybe there could be some tension there. Maybe you could have her be worried that Ruby might get hurt if the mum doesn't want to see her. There's stuff you could do that just isn't really there, and I think it's a shame. And I think I don't know why it isn't there, to be honest. I guess you could say it's a time thing, and I
But
think
this is the thing. We know Russell can do it.
Yeah.
Russell is one of the best screenwriters, I'd argue, ever. He's so good. So much of the stuff he's written is brilliant, and I don't understand why some of season one, because also it has the groundwork. Like, there's so many good episodes and good moments of season one.
Yeah.
And, like, even though I don't particularly like Empire of Death, when Ncuti is shouting at Sutek and he's, like, strapped to the TARDIS
Yeah.
with the lead, like, the performance, the music, the visuals, is all
and the
really
ending
good
as well
stuff.
when she meets her mum in
Yeah,
that
it's
final
nice.
scene is
It is
really
nice.
good, and like
Yeah.
the departure scene, I think, where you know is really well played, where she keeps getting interrupted by the phone, and the doctor's like, "It's okay, I get it. You want to, you know, you've got your life out there now." I think all that is really well done. So it's not, because I see this sentiment a lot that like, oh, you know, Russell's lost it. He's completely fallen away. And I don't think he has, because if that were true, you wouldn't have episodes like Wildly Yonder. You wouldn't have episodes like 73 Yards or Dot and Bubble. The Russell that we all know is clearly still there. It's just a case of...
I think as well, it's just like the Star Beast. He came back and it was like, okay, Russell's back. Like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, the dialogue.
It felt like it never left,
Yeah,
really.
the ending, don't get me wrong. Once again, there's an ending problem with the what do they say?
There's all the binary, non-binary, which is like a bit clunky, but there's also
the male presenting Time Lord.
Yes, the male presenting Time Lord.
A line like that, I'm trying to word this correctly without getting cancelled. A line like that, it doesn't really make sense. What's said doesn't mean anything. And all it does is give cannon fodder to the psycho right-wing nutjobs online who are going to take that line, put it in a YouTube title and go, woke! And it's like, no, hang on, the story itself isn't woke. Like, there's nothing woke
up to
about
that point, most of the trans stuff I think is handled really well.
Yeah.
You know, like the scenes of like Sylvia struggling with it and not really knowing what to do. Like that feels really genuine and well played to me. And I think like that's all really well done. But then it's when he tries to infuse the sci-fi with the grounded like human stuff where I think it sort of begins to be a bit murky. When he starts to be like, the Doctor's male and female and neither and more. It's like, is that why Rose is non-binary? And also I didn't even know they were non-binary until the final scene. You know, obviously I knew they were trans, obviously, because that's the part of the story. But the non-binary thing wasn't really established until that line happens, and it feels like it's only there so Russell can do the joke of binary, non-binary. I don't know, like
it's just bizarre.
It's one of those. I do enjoy this new era. I will lay out my gauntlet here. I am a fan of this current era, but it's simultaneously some of the Doctor Who I've enjoyed the most, and also the Doctor Who I've been frustrated with the most at the same time, because it's sort of like the only way I can describe it is being a teacher and knowing there's a kid that can get like A-star grades, right? But he doesn't fully put the effort in. And he's just sort of coasting along at a B. The work's not bad. The work's good. The work's got potential. But it's not where you know it can be. And I think that's what's slightly frustrating about
But
season 1.
I don't understand what it is because it's not like if you've read like what you have the writer's tale and stuff.
Yeah.
Russell works himself to death.
Yeah.
Like he gives his everything, which is why I don't want to sound like I'm just slagging off his work.
No, absolutely not. We do like him a lot.
Yeah,
I
we
hope that's
love
clear.
Russell, and I know if I ever met the man, as we discussed earlier, I would, I don't know what I'd do. He's an amazing person, but it's the little things. But maybe we're just Doctor Who complaining.
Might be
but
that.
it's the little things that are just like it's so close to almost perfect.
Yeah.
And you've gone and written that line, or there's just these little moments where I'm surprised as well, not just because it's not fair to just go, oh, it's all Russell. Like, how has nobody in the production team at any stage gone, guys, is that line a good idea? Or would that just end up making people angry? Or is that, like, do you know what I mean? Even with the Sutek reveal, did nobody just sort of go, hang on, it doesn't really make sense that he's been clung to the TARDIS for every adventure since Pyramids of Mars.
That decision baffles me. That decision does baffle me because I get that he said that, oh, it was an idea I had when I was a kid and stuff. But with the greatest of respect, some ideas we have as a kid aren't that good. Some of the ideas we have as a kid, we have them as a kid for a reason. And that's because,
I think the idea though is good.
Yeah.
If let's say a parallel universe, Legopolis doesn't happen, and for Tom Baker's regeneration story, you have the reveal that Sutek's been clung to the You can't do it 50 years later. How many times TARDIS blown up or been destroyed or whatever, like the Big Bang 2? Was Sutek just having a nap?
Or when Davros tries to burn it in the pit and it dematerializes away, was he not going, God, it's going to be a hot idea, isn't it?
Though, that is quite fun is, Rose, like she enters the heart of the TARDIS, all of that.
Yeah.
Bad Wolf. What if that was a subconscious warning? I'm handing it to you on a plate here, Russell. What if when she entered the heart of the TARDIS was trying to subconsciously say, because why the words Bad Wolf? Where do they come from? It could be the TARDIS subconsciously going, Rose, look, we've got a bad wolf on the roof.
There's a bloke on top of it. Can we get someone out to sort it,
He's asleep right now, and he won't wake up till someone spills some coffee, even though we've literally blown up the whole universe from this.
This is what baffles me. It could so easily be rewritten as the coffee makes the TARDIS's systems, like the defense systems go offline or something. It goes into the vortex. You've got Sutek lurking in the vortex, and then he latches on, which explains why the first instance of Wild Blue Yonder, that's why it happens.
This is my idea, right? And I think it would have been great. Amazing.
Go for it.
Right, in Wild Blue Yonder, the pilot that we only see like the exoskeleton of? That pilot should have been, are they called the Sirens?
Yeah.
It should have been one of Sutek's species or something along those lines. And the ship should have had maybe a bit of like ancient Egyptian sort of architecture and design to it. Because setting it up for new audiences as well. The Doctor could even say to Donna, not too exposition heavy, but something along the lines of like, oh, I met one of these before. Oh, he wasn't like that. Most of them were peace-loving people, but this one he wanted to be a god. He was crazy. Yeah. And then, when he sprinkles the salt, that word and him talking about Sutek wanted to be a god, and let's say the pilot was one of Sutek's species, maybe the pilot feared Sutek as well, maybe there's still an alive pilot on the ship who mentions it to the Doctor in passing or something, and just that little bit, because they were at the edge of the universe where the boundaries of time and blah, 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 that little thing, and the sprinkling of salt there, led to a manifestation of Sutek in a godlike form. And that is when he latches onto the TARDIS and leaves with them. I think that makes complete sense. But instead, they're like, nah, he's been there since, Pyramids of Mars. Yeah, he was there the whole time.
And even before then, because the implication is that he's been like, because they mentioned like 1066, which is, as far as I'm aware, a First Doctor story.
Yeah.
So is the implication that like he's just retroactively always been there the whole time? Because it's just, that's the thing. It's kind of like I think one of the issues I think that's really hampered this new series is not that, Russell lost it or anything, because I could talk for ages about how much I love stories like Dawn Bowl. I think it's a really unique world with I think it's a really ballsy premise to have your one of your episodes follow a lead that just is completely unlikable.
Yeah.
And having the faith to do that and having a really, the bubble, it's such a simple thing. It's a screen that projects a bunch of little screens, but it feels so true to something we would actually see in a few years from now.
Yeah.
I think the world building of that place, I think the undertones of it, I think it's really good, and it can only be done by a writer who is talented and very good at what they do. I say all that to say this is not coming from someone who hates, Russell's work. I love Russell's work and a lot of the recent stuff as well. But I think one of the big issues is the way he writes a series is not conducive to an 8-episode run length, because he is writing series as though they are still 12 to 13 episodes. So, for example, with the Susan Triad stuff, that's your equivalent to a Bad Wolf or a Torchwood or a Saxon. The difference there was you had plenty of little times to drop that in without it feeling super forced. And then by the time you get to the finale, it's happened enough times and there's been enough build-up for you to go, oh, cool. With 8 episodes, the build-up is completely thrown off. It doesn't feel like enough has happened to really justify a big event happening in the same way. And with stuff like the snow as well, it doesn't feel fully formed.
What was the snow?
I don't know.
Hang on. What was the snow? It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, it was.
It didn't even get a line. He hasn't even had a random interview. I'll maybe series 2, season 2. If the snow is not explained in season 2, I'll delete my channel out of anger.
That might be. You might live to regret those words.
There goes the channel. I will not delete my channel.
Yeah, just clarify that.
That's mad. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah,
the snow didn't even.
My personal headcanon, because that's all we have, is that so when the Doctor went back to bring Ruby back from when the Goblins took her, that created a vulnerable point in time, and so therefore the snow is kind of a way of protecting that time period, or basically it's to show that time period is bleeding outwards. That's just my headcanon, but that's what I'm saying. I have to come up with that
the
to justify
fact that we have to discuss the intricacies of why or why not snow may or may not
appear at random times. That's the thing. That should be the thing is, I think there's been a lot of discussion about things happening and the sort of shift to fantasy as well. And I agree, not everything has to be explained. I agree with that. I think with things like 73 Hours particularly, there are some things that are better left unsaid to a degree. Not all of it. There are still some things I would rather be said.
No, though, because 73 Yards, that is a cracking episode of Inside Number 9. That's a great episode of what other... My mind's gone blank. Black Mirror.
I was going to say Black Mirror, but that's
shows.
probably more Dawn Bubble, to be fair.
But
what's...
Oh...
I know what you mean.
There's a specific show. I'm trying to remember. It's American. It's like Inside Number 9. I can't... It'll come to me. But
it'll come to you in a bit, yeah.
Shows like that leave you... The Twilight Zone.
There you go.
An episode of The Twilight Zone is exactly you watch it and then you're like, oh, well, what just happened there? There's that one that's a silent French film, and it's a guy running and running and running and running, and in the end you realise that was him watching his life back in the moments before he died. Or there's that one where everyone on Earth disappears and there's just one person running around the Twilight Zone, and it's all spooky, and then I think it's revealed at the end that he's in a simulation, or something. It's classic sci-fi, but it's so cool, and it's that 73 Yards would have been a cracking episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
It is not, however, a cracking episode of Doctor Who, because you cannot leave. It's like, imagine Turn Left, right? But without any explanation. You would kind of be like, what? And the fact that nothing is learned or gained from it. Turn Left, Donna forgets, sure. But you get the bad wolf thing. You get her telling this thing. And you fundamentally realise as a character that Donna is, like, she's still a, like, capable companion, even if the Doctor's not there.
But it's good because you get to see just how much she has changed through the adventures with the Doctor. That's another issue with it. It means it doesn't quite have the same impact as 73 Yards. We haven't really known Ruby long enough for a story like that to work as well.
Episode.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I think as a showcase for Ruby, I think that episode alone, along with some of the others, is why I am more of a fan of her character than like some of the fam, for example.
Yeah.
Because she is capable and she does have like
Lily Gibson gives a fantastic performance.
She does.
Like,
And,
that's
yeah,
got
like-
everyone in the series, to be fair. There aren't really any bad performances.
But like with Ruby specifically, I do think she's better than like most of the fam for the specific reason of I get why she enjoys the traveling. I get what she is looking for in life, which is something I couldn't say for all of the last few, if you get what I'm trying to say. But again, it comes down to that thing of, like with some of the Chibnall ones, they didn't progress as much as I would have wanted them to. But I think what you were saying about it being a good episode of The Twilight Zone, that's one of my other issues with the series, is it tries to do formula breaks without establishing first what the formula actually is. A 73 Yards-esque episode would work fine if we were, say, 2-3 series in to this new run, and then bam, you get this weird experimental thing once the characters are fully established and the universe is fully built up and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really work as the 4th episode of your brand new reboot for season 1. It just doesn't. That's not me saying it's a bad episode. Again, I said why I really like it. I think it's got some really interesting ideas. I think, there's a lot of stuff you could do there with like her kind of trying to escape her own lack of connection with people. So like obviously that woman is constantly reaching out, trying to get to people in that way, and she feels like she's been deprived of that in some way because of her mum. There's a lot of stuff that you can read into there, and I think it is well done. But it's fundamentally, it's not an episode 4, and it's the same thing goes with Space Babies for episode 1 for a different reason. It's not really an episode 1. It's Space Babies is an odd one because it's dressed as an episode 1, and you've got that opening bit that is this is the first episode. But I think just like Space Babies as a concept is just such like it's a very, I guess it's not too dissimilar to End of the World in the sense of like, this is what Doctor Who is, either you're in or you're out. But I sort of felt that there was, I think the difference is with End of the World, there's enough to ground it with the characters. Because you've got Rose Tyler being like, you brought me here and I don't even know who you are. Also, your box gets in my head and changes how I hear things. That's a bit weird. Why didn't you even ask about that? Like, there's that human element which isn't really there with Space Babies as much.
I think
she's
the thing
kind of
with
along with
Space
it.
Babies, it's like a tick list of everything you expect.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it reminds me a bit, and I can say this as a fan filmmaker myself, but it's like a fan film. When you're doing an episode 1, and you're like, okay, we've got to introduce the companion.
Yeah.
Got to introduce that, okay, so the companion can phone her mum from space. Right, that one's ticked off. You can have a TARDIS key, that one's ticked off. Let's throw in, the Rani. The Rani gets a mention, that one's ticked off. And it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like a checklist of, time travel, okay, tick. Space travel, tick. It's like, no, do it organically. Series 1 builds it up. Like Eccleston's series, you don't learn everything immediately. Whereas within the first 5 minutes of Space Babies, he's like, I'm a Time Lord, I'm for Planet Gallifrey, there's a villain called the Rani. And then by the end of the episode, she already has a TARDIS key. It's like...
You can almost feel Russell going, I've written all this before, so I'm just going to quickly jot it down so I can get to the bits that I want to write. And I do get that to a certain extent, because he has done it before multiple times, but at the same time, it's not supposed to feel like that's the audience. It's got to feel fresh.
That's why I thought Bill Potts and Series 10 is one of my favourite series, is because I think Bill it's the traditional companion introduction, but in such a different way. Like, it feels so fresh. And the questions she asks, and the dynamic with Nardole as well, where, like, her and the Doctor are bantering, and he's just like, oh, banter, your turn. Like, all of that. It's so fun, and it feels different. It feels like the old formula. You've got to do the checklist, but in a unique way. And she doesn't immediately have full trust in the Doctor or the Doctor in her. You get episodes like Thin Ice where she has a go at him, and like you come to terms with them as people, and they grow. And season 1, Shooty's episode, the first, like, it's just Ruby, I like you. Here's a key. Let's go adventures. No. You need more dynamicness between the characters.
Yeah, you need more conflict as well. Like that's one of the main things that's like missing from this series overall. It's the same issue I had with the Chibnall era to a certain extent. Everyone always agreed with what the Doctor was doing. And you're not supposed to, because I think a common misconception about the Doctor, or at least in my head, right, is that the Doctor isn't an out-and-out protagonist. They are in the sense of they're the person we follow along with. But they're not objectively a great person all the time. You know what I mean? They do things that you're like, oh, that's a bit, not sure about that. You sure you want to just kill that guy over there?
This is the thing. To quote my own work, which isn't even out yet, but Echo's Dust. There's a line like
coming to you in 2035,
in a couple of thousand years. But there's a line along the lines of like, the Doctor is not a person; it's an idea to live up to.
Yes,
because that's. I think it's so true when you watch the show.
And that's very much what Capaldi's arc is as well.
The Doctor never ever is the perfect person. They're often vain, they're arrogant, they're a bit annoying sometimes. Like, even go back to the Tom Baker sort of Doctor, he's so up himself. It's great though. You love to watch that as an audience because he feels like it's like that's a person. Whereas if the Doctor, and I think it's more so sometimes a problem with some of the Jodie stuff, she is never directly like Graham or Ryan or whoever never directly looks at her and goes, look, that was not very nice. Don't do that. And they shouldn't say those exact words. But like Donna in Fires of Pompeii yelling at him. Bill in the, what's it called, Thin Ice, yelling at him.
Being like, how many people have you watched die and stuff?
It's
my
great.
God, and it's like, there's not really much of that in season 1 either, really. It's kind of just, I'm on board. And like, I think Russell has said in an interview, he wanted it to be a lighter, more fun, chill experience because of everything that's going on in the world. And while I get that, I think that's the wrong idea. People want complexity, but you can have a fun series that's also got complex characters in it. You know, like
I think it needs to be a 50-50.
This is going to feel like a weird example because it's fallen off massively in the last couple of years. But Rick and Morty, right? You look at that, or at least early on.
This is the depths we've reached in this podcast.
You look at that though, right? And Rick and Morty early on, Rick is not a good guy.
Yeah.
But a lot of those adventures that they go on are very wacky and still very fun. But that doesn't mean that, you know, the two main characters have to get on all the time for that to be the case. You know what I'm saying? Frequently, in fact, the fun and the comedy can come from when they don't agree or get on. You know, 100%. That's part of the fun with, you know, the Fourth Doctor and Harry Sullivan. It's like, you know, you're improving, Harry. Your mind's beginning to work.
Naturally, it's down to my influence, of course.
You shouldn't take any credit. It's like, that's the sort of stuff that I think is missing. There isn't any of that kind of... And I don't really know why, because he has done it before. You know, there's the scenes with you know, Rose and the Ninth Doctor that'll, you know, how many planets have a north, you know, all this. And it's just little bits of banter like that just aren't really there with Ruby and 15. And it's a shame because I think chemistry-wise, Gower and Gibson are really great together.
Yeah.
And I fully buy that they would travel together and be friends and do all this stuff.
It's a fresh dynamic as well. Like, it's what I think Russell and, is his name Andy Pryor, the casting guy?
Yes.
What they absolutely nailed with Shooty and Millie is they are so current. It's such like our generation Doctor and companion. Like, it's perfect for that. And as well, the fact that Ruby is, like, she's younger than both of us, like Millie Gibson. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like an old man now.
Yeah.
But they're so modern and current, and I just don't understand why everything should be perfect, but it's not quite reaching the heights of season 4 or series 4 or series 1 from New Who or series 10. I
wonder if an aspect of it as well, though, is because we know that Russell is a writer that takes inspiration from the things that are like culturally relevant at the time. He said before that like early New Who very much was kind of based on things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and kind of the resurgence of like early fantasy shows in like the sort of late 90s. I think one of the issues is his inspiration for this was like the MCU. And I think that would have been a fine place to take inspiration from a few years ago. But taking inspiration from it now...
I disagree, because I think Russell, if you look at what he says in interviews about, like, for example, the Loki show, he's openly critical. And I'm pretty sure I'm not making this up, he was asked to write Secret Invasion, the Marvel TV show. And
I do remember something about that. Yeah, or at least no. I think he was apparently like slated to write a Marvel project. Yeah. If not that, it was something else.
It was because he said no to it, and he's critical of Loki, and he does watch these things. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Somewhere within the production pipeline, little elements of Doctor Who season 1 and what the worry I do have is anything going to change for the next season? Because they already shot it. They shot it before any feedback, and then obviously you go into the future. Are Disney going to renew it?
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. It is like arguably the weirdest time in terms of like the future of the show, because I think we've always kind of had the assumption it was going to get a next series no matter what, for the most part. Like even when, say, for example, I don't know, a series 10 hadn't been announced, you sort of knew there was going to be a series 10, right? And like equally, with any other series, obviously, with the exception of like series 1, because that was the first one, and you don't know how it's going to do. But like with this, it is interesting because it's not just the BBC anymore. It is these other factors, and I wonder if that is an aspect to it. I wonder if they have tried. Look, I think a lot of people get very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Paranoid when it comes to Disney and like, oh, they've Disney-fied it. I still think it's Russell for the most part. And I don't think it's been fundamentally changed to a point of like unrecognizability by Disney or anything like that. But I think that with the move to a big streaming service, there is kind of this move to make it a bit more, I don't know, I can't think of the right word, more kind of colourful and more kind of like in line with, kind of those popcorn type shows and films, like with Marvel to an extent, those kind of roller coaster-esque film. You know what I'm saying? Like that Scorsese
I think part of it is, I'm going to use, I know we've discussed this analogy before, and I came up with it and then you stole it and put it on Twitter. Which, yeah.
I want to say, judge, the court, Your Honour, I forgot it was you that said it. But
what was hilarious, for context, the audience out there, myself and Thomas/Tharries had...
Thomas, how formal that was.
If we're in court, we're doing this professionally. We had a discussion on the Confused Adipose Discord server, link in bio. And I was like, I think, I'll get to the analogy in a minute, but like George Lucas and Russell T Davies are very similar.
Yeah.
And then the next day, on Twitter, Tharries is like, I've had this wonderful thought. George Lucas. And then, the day after, we come into a Discord call, and I sarcastically am like, it was a good point you put on Twitter. And he starts explaining it back to me. And I was like, I told you that. But anyway.
I'd fully forgotten it was you that said it.
It's all right. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
I will take my sentence of 10 years in solitary confinement.
I'm gonna report your channel for copyright theft.
Copyright infringement, No, I think your point, to use your point, is bang on. Like, it is like George Lucas with the prequels.
That's the thing. It is. He started. Well, no, it's the original trilogy. Let's go back.
Yeah.
The original trilogy, right? George Lucas was under a lot of pressure. He was like, there's a YouTube video called like how Star Wars was saved in edit.
Yes,
There were
I've seen
so
that
many
video.
things, so many people that went, oh, is this going to work? I'm not sure. And they all really tried their best, and they all tried to tailor it to make sure it was still like the best product it could be.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same with 2000 revival of Doctor Who. If
Yeah.
you watch all those interviews, everybody is like, Eccleston talks about one of the reasons he's so angry at the production. It was Eccleston's folly or Russell's folly, and if it went wrong, it was all Russell's fault or it was all Eccleston's fault, because people didn't want to be associated with it. They thought it would be a flop, but Russell wrote it so brilliantly that it wasn't a flop. And when it became successful, everyone jumps on the bandwagon, and then it gets better and better and better and better. But brilliant stuff. But now when Russell comes back, I think Disney, for example, things like the memory TARDIS or the Sutek reveal, I think should be stopped. Just like in the prequels, certain things should have been stopped. Certain lines of dialogue, people should have gone, George, are you sure you want to write that? But everyone is so convinced the original trilogies were perfect. The new Who was perfect. Russell knows what he's doing. We'll let him do it. And I think sometimes
I think another great example,
balance.
There's a bunch of examples of stories and scenes that never made it that people were like, cut that, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
For example, there's two that immediately come to mind. The first one is probably the most famous one. It's the deleted scene of the Meta Crisis getting that bit of TARDIS to grow, and they kind of go, stupid, we don't need that, get rid of it. That's stuff I don't think that would be cut now. I don't think it would. I think that would probably still make it in. Like, and there's another one, which is a very different, concept, but like, Russell has this idea of like, obviously, it would be very poorly aged now, but J.K. Rowling, her imagination comes to life, and like the Doctor has to fight wizards and stuff, and that kind of sounds like an RTD2 plot minus the Harry Potter association.
Very
obviously.
fantasy, yes.
Yeah, and minus the Harry Potter association, obviously, it very much feels like something he would write now. But there was obviously David Tennant was there saying, "Oh, I don't know, I think that would feel a bit Harry-ish or a bit cheap." And I don't know whether there's as much, because I think you're right. I think we all, and it's true, I think to a certain extent as a fan base, we kind of contributed to the myth of Russell T Davies, the legend of Russell T Davies, to be fair, like a legendary Sunday, the legend of Russell T Davies.
It's important because we think it's important.
But with Russell, he is the godfather of new Doctor Who. He is the guy who is credited as, he is the one who started it. But the reality is, it's him and a bunch of people around him as well. And obviously, a lot of those people are still around him today, which is great. But I do think because of that early success, there's kind of this expectation that it worked then, you just give it to the same guy and it'll exactly the same thing will happen. And I think to a certain extent, we were all a bit naive like that when it got announced. I think a lot of people were sort of expecting like Russell to come back and Doctor Who to reach 2008 levels of popularity instantaneously. The toy shops to be full with Doctor Who toys.
Bring back Toys R Us.
Toys R Us would magically reopen, and we'd have a kids show on CBBC and an adult show on BBC Three and all of the rest of it. But that was never really the atmosphere that he was entering into. I think contextually, it's important to remember where the show was when he picked it up. A lot of people obviously have mentioned it before, but like Chibnall wasn't sure what was going to happen to it after he left it. It wasn't a new thing that they could bring back and it be, it's this cool new thing that's not been on air for a while. It was this thing that's been on air for a while and they weren't sure what to do with it next. And I think that context matters because I think it kind of explains the approach they've taken this time around in the sense of like, give it to someone we trust, who we know can do it and do it well enough. And I think that trust has kind of led to a sense of like free reign for Russell particularly. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for creators having, like their voice and stuff and their vision and all the rest of it. But I do think there needs to be more kind of, maybe change this a bit. Just other writers as well, which there is in season 2, to be fair.
Things like the memory TARDIS that really just someone needed to go in. Like watching Pyramids of Mars on a screen, someone needed to just go, no, not happening. It's not happening, Russell. But I don't think anybody does. And it's a tricky one. Because also, we could just be chatting absolute waffle here.
We could.
These are just our ideas.
And I want to repeat again, because obviously we've been slagging it off quite a bit. I do like this new run. I genuinely do. A lot of people, when I say that, they're like, oh, you're just like biased because it's Russell or whatever, and because like you're nostalgic. First of all, I'm more nostalgic for early Moffat than I am for Russell, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I'm more nostalgic.
That's the thing for both of us. We became Doctor Who fans in the Moffat era, not the Russell T Davies era.
Yeah. So when people say, "Oh, you're just like someone who's nostalgic for like the Tennant years," my nostalgia mainly comes from like series 5 and 6. That's what was airing when I was a kid. I remember being devastated when Series 6 was split in half, and there was that little message being like, coming this autumn. I'm like, what do you mean coming this autumn? Really halfway through. That was my nostalgia. So I'm not coming at this from a perspective of, he is my God, he can do no wrong. But like, I am coming at it from the perspective of, he very clearly still has it. Otherwise, well beyond it, I know that, like, obviously, I don't think you like it as much as I do, but, like, for me, it's one of my favorite episodes we've had in, like, years. It's probably up there as one of my favorites of New Who, maybe. I think it's a wonderful, like, premise. I think Tennant and Tate are phenomenal in it. I think the setting is really cool. I think, just the not things as a concept are ingenious, and it's kind of, this idea of like the uncanny valley and people not being quite there, kind of bit of the AI kind of comparisons going on there. Really good stuff in that. And again, like I said with Dot and Bubble, that can only come from someone who knows what they're doing to an extent, that level of like just writing can only come from someone talented. But I think that's what, again, as I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself. That's what's frustrating, is Russell is fantastic. But it's just, sometimes it's that line from Runaway Bride. Sometimes I think you need someone to stop you. It's like, I think that's it. I do. And I think in all fairness, I think it was the same with Moffat as well. Because you look at some of the Moffat era, and you can sort of see where some of the general public sort of went, what's going on? And I think that's an example of where Moffat probably went too Moffat-y as well. So I don't think it's just a Russell issue. I think Moffat can be prone to it as well.
That's made me have a thought as well of this new era. One of the biggest problems is it's not a new era.
Yeah.
Because it's not... It's Series 14. This is not Season 1. If you're calling it Season 1, it's got to feel like it did in 2005. And as you mentioned way back, it's in a different position because it hasn't been off air for however many years. But I think the structure of it needed to change.
Yeah.
45 minutes weekly, like individual stories, no. I want flux, but with a good finale. It was such, like, have interconnected stories, but episodes like War of the Sontarans or Village of the Angels, where they go off and do their own thing.
Yeah.
Like, Doctor Who's structure needed to fundamentally change. The cast and crew all needed to change. I think a bit of the writing style needs to change. And the character of the Doctor needs to change. Now, he has changed, but he's not developing. He's just a happy guy. And it's like, no, what makes the other Doctors so compelling is the bubbling under the surface and the scheming and all of that. Like, yeah. But we'll try and draw this to a semi-conclusion because we've been talking about this for ages.
Just before we end it off, though, because you were saying about the Doctor's character, because like the whole point with the bi-generation is, this new gap with Doctor 15 doesn't have the trauma of the last few. And while I think that's a good idea in concept, and I could definitely see how you would go, okay, this is a clean slate Doctor for our new era. Makes sense. I think the issue, though, is that they didn't replace it with anything else. They didn't replace what he was feeling with anything else. It's just, I am good now. And I mean, there's aspects where he clearly still isn't, because like Rogue, he's like, new adventures, new skies, moving on, let's go. So he's clearly not still all right, but it's not being delved into as much as it should be, why he's still not quite all right. Even if you just put some lines in, because I honestly think, and this is another thing, I think the 14th Doctor is characterised and developed really well.
Yeah.
That's a somewhat hot take on Twitter these days, especially because a lot of people will just say he's 10 but old. I think there is a bit more going on there. I think there always has been a little bit more under the surface than people give credit to with the 60th, I think. With 15, it's not quite as there. And I think maybe it can. What I'm personally hoping they would do, this the whole reason this conversation started was like the future of Doctor Who. One of the things I'm hoping they'll do is if season 1 is A New Hope, season 2 is Empire Strikes Back. So that's the one where everything goes wrong, all the conflict starts, and like things really hit the fan.
Or it's Attack of the Clones and it's terrible.
It could also be that.
We'll have to wait and see.
But I'm hoping for the former.
Yeah. I've realised now, we've been talking for so long, we'll get back to the main point of this video. Leaks. Tharries. You yourself are very known for leaks. And I asked the wonderful audience out there to send in the leaks, the biggest, the craziest, the most insane Doctor Who leaks that they can remember. And we'll go through them and read.
The leaks of series past.
Yeah. It's a trip down memory lane. So, the first one we've got, it name drops you, which is why I've picked this comment first.
Oh, yeah.
From Oscar Watt 2041 on the Tharries subreddit. I don't know if it still exists. Does it still exist?
I think it's up, but I haven't used it in years.
It's buried. Someone said that there's going to be a character in Series 14 which was an allegory for Andrew Tate. It didn't happen.
It did not happen. I guess the closest you would get to would be, the racism allegories of Don Bubble, but that isn't really sexism. I guess you could have. I am curious because didn't Moffat or didn't Russell say that it was that story was originally designed for like the 11th Doctor and Amy or something? Yeah. So maybe it would have been more of a sexism thing.
I reckon though, when he says that, the original story was just going to be like
technology.
Yeah, I reckon that was the concept. Then the racism stuff came after. But that's quite a wet lettuce of a one to start with because
safe to say it did not happen. And I'm kind of glad it didn't because I think it would be a very difficult thing to get right. I'm not saying you couldn't, but I think especially given how current that figure was, it might be a bit like.
Well, that's the thing. Actually, it's just reminded me. One of my the most bizarre experiences I've had online is watching Andrew Tate react to the Star Beast.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Who the is me? Is what? Dearie me. Did I tell you as well? Someone at uni who I went to uni with, who's not necessarily the most politically correct person. She never really watches Doctor Who, but she knows that Joe's the Doctor Who person. Her reaction to the Star Beast, all she sent me was just a message going, "Why is a big bunny rabbit asking about pronouns?" And I was like, what a review. What a review. But we'll move swiftly on from the likes of Andrew Tate, who don't deserve the airtime that we're giving them. And do you want to read the second comment to get us out of this rabbit hole?
That's not what I was expecting to start with. All right, this one is from Raspberry Vodka Bun. Very nice name, Raspberry Vodka Bun.
Shout out to Raspberry Vodka Bun. Sorry, carry on.
Gotta be that time that multiple early unfinished edits and scripts of Season 8 leaked online.
I remember this.
I was not really around when this happened, but I know about it retrospectively, if you know what I mean. So, I know about it. All I can say is I wish to God I had a channel back then.
No, the leaks would have gone crazy. I remember... Crazy. In fact, this is a good question. What is the first leak you remember for Doctor Who? Because I was thinking about this in preparation for the podcast, and I can actually pinpoint it to a Council of Geeks video that was discussing who the John Hurt Doctor was. So this was before the 50th, and I remember being sat outside. I had like a chunky laptop back in the day.
Nice.
On that laptop, as my family were having a barbecue, I was being social as ever, sat at the side watching Doctor Who leak videos. And I just remember all the discussions about who is the other Doctor. I think he was branded at the time. But what was your first Doctor Who link?
Good question. I mean, one of my I say it's not particularly. I remember Series 10 filming, right? And my auntie had a friend who worked on the set, and it was the filming of Thin Ice, and they just my aunt just sent me like footage of like Pete Capaldi in his little top hat and him doing one of the scenes. I can't remember what scene it was. I probably won't be able to find the footage now. But that fascinated me when I was young. I was like, wow, this is like them filming before it goes out. And I think that you can pinpoint that as the origin story for many things that would come later on. That was when it was instilled into me of like, oh, this idea of seeing TV before it happens. It was really interesting. In terms of earlier than that, I can't think of many. I remember like a lot of the speculation surrounding like who the next Doctor was going to be very well. Like, for example, I don't know where this came from, but like for the longest time, I was convinced that there was this article, and I don't know whether anyone can find it now, that the 12th Doctor was going to be a teenage guy, like a sort of teenager, but a boy who like rides horses. I'll see if I mentioned this before, but it was like
that describes Peter Capaldi perfectly.
It does, and as you can tell, it was 100% right. Yeah, and like I think my nan found this article, and like for the next year, I was convinced that was who he was going to be. I don't. If anyone can find that article,
I want to know the backstory to this article. Someone in the comments. But
I think the actor was like, I think, or the person they were saying was going to get the role was like 18 or something, and I was like, oh.
I remember as well around that era, my granddad in one of the newspapers, there was like a predicted thing of like, these are going to be the next Doctor. And Billy Piper was like second in the running. And I just remember as a kid having this whole like, whoa, Billy Piper might be the Doctor. And that would be so crazy. And then it didn't happen. And I remember as well, I was optimistic when Capaldi was announced, but I was like, who is this guy? As if they were going to like put in like Tom Cruise or someone that I knew as a kid. I was like, who's this guy? But he's now my favourite Doctor.
DiCaprio is the 12th
Doctor. But his companions are always under 25.
Yes. Which, to be fair, is not that far removed from the show.
Actually, the joke doesn't even work. That is Doctor Who. The Doctor has some questions to answer. Anyway, the next comment we have is that Graham was the master in disguise.
I remember this because it was the scene in Timeless Child, wasn't it? Where he says, I'm the nicest bloke you're ever going to meet. And it sounds like he's going to say something else, doesn't it?
No, but this right, I remember, this had completely slipped my mind. Everyone was doing my head in, because there were so many theories. Like, I was in sixth form at the time. I go in the next day and everyone's like, oh, he's the Doctor, isn't he? He said, I'm the Doc. No, he was going to say, I'm the dog's, as in Cockney rhyming slang, because they were joking about Cockney rhyming slang. He's like, Butcher's Hook, let's have a look. And then he goes, I'm the dog's, I don't want to get demonetised. That's what he was. But I remember this now. That slipped my mind. But
but everyone, I remember for weeks, well, not weeks, but like everyone since Timeless Children came out were like, is he the Doctor? Is he the Master? Is he, another like pre-Hartnell Doctor? Is he, whatever? Is he the Rani? Because it's always the Rani.
It's always the Rani.
It's always the Rani, even when it's not. In fact, I remember like them saying that maybe the woman he was with in that story was the Rani. I seem to remember that.
I remember I made a video saying she was the next Doctor.
Oh, nice.
I think the thing is, once the Fugitive Doctor reveal happened in 2020, every single other character that had a vaguely doctory characteristic about them, I was like, pre-Hartnell Doctor. Because I thought there was some big genius 5-year master plan. Do you remember that? The Chibnall era, the 5-year master plan? Didn't happen. It wasn't a 5-year plan. But we'll move on to the next one if you want to read that one.
Sure, yeah. Hang on, let me get it up.
This is fun.
This is. I'd forgotten most of these, I'll be honest.
It's bringing it back.
Nothing about any leaks, but I once heard. Oh, this is, by the way, from Most amused 2797. I forgot to say the name. Nothing about any leeks, spelt like the vegetable, by the way. But I once heard Tom Baker wanted to have a cabbage which would sit on his shoulder and ask questions as a companion. I think maybe this led to Davison's bit of celery on the lapel. I don't remember it ever talking though. No, I don't either. That would have been like a fever dream if it did. Imagine if Caves of Androzani was happening, right? And the celery just started to go, oh, the air's getting a bit dodgy in here. You might want to do
Someone
something
needs
about
to
it.
edit that. We need a cut of the Davison era, but every time anything happens, the celery just has like a really, really crap line of dialogue that doesn't need to be
And then when
there.
he eats it, it's just like screaming. It's
It's just dying.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but
the celery, not the celery, the cabbage I do.
Yeah,
I remember hearing
it's
about.
I'm pretty sure it's in Tom Baker's autobiography as well. And that if you've never read Tom Baker's autobiography, it is one of the most bizarre and funny books I've ever read in my entire life. And that man is not human. I am convinced he's some sort. There's also, you know, that advert. I absolutely love it where Tom Baker's he's like, they're only $1.99, and then he just screams.
Yeah.
If I can be bothered, I'll edit the clip in here, but I probably will forget.
Also, I love the phone adverts he did for like Brazil, is it?
Yeah, coming out of the telephone box.
Yeah, and he's like, if you have all the time in the world, you can take calls at any time, but not you. You must get this phone to whatever it is. He says, "What an icon! What a man!"
He's wild. But
I was gonna say,
cabbage.
do you remember as well? Talking of Tom Baker, I remember a rumor that at the series, the panel for Flux. Because, you know, by that point, we'd sort of heard speculation that other doctors would be returning for the centenary. I don't remember where it was from, but I remember there being a theory that at the Comic-Con panel that was held, Tom Baker would show up. And the whole thing would be like, you know, he'd be one of the classic doctors coming back. Obviously, he wasn't, but we did get classic doctors that came back for the centenary. But yeah, can you imagine if they'd have just rolled out Tom Baker?
That's so cool. I think it's such a shame he wasn't one of the Guardians of the Edge, because that role is designed for him. You need to keep going, Doctor. All of that, it would have been so.
And just him slagging off the others would have been like, oh, they're going like,
I'm the only doctor in here.
I love him. It's just like, I hate all of you, actually. I don't like any of you other than me.
Anyway, speaking of doctors returning, our next leak is from Daniel2781. Matt Smith being spotted filming on location for the 60th special. I remember so much talk about this. I was so optimistic as well when they started filming the Star Beast. Like the first day, David Tennant was there, Catherine Tate was there. I was like, yeah, Matt Smith's going to be back. No.
Yeah, no. But, I also remember there was a day where a tweet went viral saying Peter Capaldi had arrived in London. You remember this?
Yes.
And everyone went, he's going to be in it. He's going to be in it as the 12th Doctor. And also I remember people saying that Georgia Tennant was also there, and maybe that Jenny would come back. Chances are she was probably just seeing her husband.
They are married, so. As
normally couples do. But I remember doing a live stream being like, oh my God, someone's just tweeted about Peter Capaldi being in London. Could this be?
Yeah, I wish he came back.
Also remember the rumour of Matt Smith doing Twice Upon a Time.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest,
that would have made sense.
Slightly hot take. Probably would have preferred that to what we ended up getting with David. Don't get me wrong. I love David Bradley. I love his version of the First Doctor. But if you to maybe pick between Sex's First Doctor and 11th Doctor, and then kind of meeting at the respective end of their cycles, I think I'd know. And I think it would just close off that era quite nicely.
Yeah, it would be a nice bookend to all of Moffat's stuff.
The only argument I guess you could make is that it might overshadow Capaldi's exit to have, his direct predecessor come back in that capacity. But, I remember that. I remember Crispy Pro doing a video on that, being like, nah, guys, Matt Smith's not back. And I was slightly gutted. I was like, oh, really?
Yeah, I think that those were like Yeah, the more crazy Doctor Who leaks. Because people, this is the thing, people always Photoshop, like,
Yeah.
especially on Twitter as well. I remember people deliberately, no names should be mentioned, but people deliberately trying to. One of my favourite memories with us is these people on a Discord server. There was a public Discord server were trying to deliberately fool me and Tharries with a fake leak.
Which one was this?
It was like
Did you
the
not
Master
say?
coming back at the end of Legend of the Sea Devils or
Yes.
something.
The
And
Centenary magazine.
yeah.
Yes.
Someone, like, one of our fans, I think they messaged you. They messaged you like,
Yeah.
"Look what's happening in this server," and
Yeah.
then we were on it. We were like, "Okay, keep us posted." And these people were just going and going and going and going. And
Yeah.
I've read all the messages, just absolutely slating both of us, going,
Yeah.
"These imbeciles will
They'll
fall
never
for
get
our
it."
plan."
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like, "Come on, guys!" And it was great because. I sound like Neko Avocado, whatever his name is. We were 2 steps ahead.
I've
Always
always been 2 steps
But we were there, and I remember there's one of their usernames. I put in a tweet in capitals, but like as part of another word. I'm not going to say it because there's no drama, but it was so much fun because I remember just being sat on a Discord call going. These people are just here trying their best, and they were going, "Oh, why don't they believe it? Oh, I can't believe they don't believe it." And like, we're reading all your messages, guys. But that was absolutely hilarious.
Iconic. What
So
time
much
that
fun.
was.
I felt like I was like undercover. I was like getting all these secret messages from the server, but it was a public server.
Yeah. So we weren't doing anything. Yeah, we weren't doing anything. We weren't like, "Oh, we're going to invade and just take over."
Well, I am a member of that server now, so
there you go.
Oh, it was great fun. Anyway, back on track. The next question that's not a question. The next leak is.
Oh yes, it's me this time.
Tharries is the leak.
Yeah, no, I am the leak. Peter Capaldi and Gareth Roberts almost coming to blows over Gareth being bigoted on set. Now, I don't think it was over this, but I did hear that Peter Capaldi and Gareth Roberts did not agree on the script of The Caretaker. That sounds about right. I don't know about the bigoted stuff, but I at least know that Capaldi and Gareth Roberts, there was something there. Apparently, he didn't like the script of Caretaker very much, which I know you like it. I'm in the camp of.
This is the thing. I want to clarify Gareth Roberts, his political takes. I do not agree with at all. But The Caretaker as an episode, I love The Caretaker.
There are Gareth Roberts episodes I like. The Caretaker isn't one of them for me. It's
one of my comfort episodes. Like, I know that everyone's like, what? But just it's so funny. Maybe I just have a warped sense of humour, but all the dialogue, I just think it's hit after hit after hit. And the whole, like, you've made a boyfriend error. How could I be your father when we both look exactly the same age? No, we do not. I was being kind. All of that is just, I absolutely love it. But
I wonder how much of that is Capaldi specifically and just the delivery as well.
I like to imagine Capaldi just rewrote the entire episode. So that I'll give credit to Capaldi. Well done, Capaldi. Excellent episode.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I do like some of his. I like Unicorn and the Wasp quite a bit. He does some great stuff with Sarah Jane Adventures. But like, I've never liked Caretaker very much personally. But there we are.
But in terms of the leak, this one's been going around the internet for years, hasn't it? The Peter Capaldi and him having a falling out, which I reckon it probably did happen, but they're both professional. And
it seems
drama doesn't need to become public, so I don't have too much to say.
Likely enough for me to probably be like, yeah, I can see it. Because he never writes for the show again. So
that's mad. He never came back, did he?
No, that was it.
Yeah, well, shout out to Capaldi.
I thought you were going to say Gareth Roberts.
No. Right, the next person is Textmasters Blast. Says, Shooty Gatwa in the 14th Doctor shirt and tie with no trousers. This is what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It is the fact that it was all accurate is wild, because I made a video discussing that entire leak and just absolutely going, what a funny leak. This isn't true.
And even the line of like, oh, you win the game, you get a prize, honey, and then he whacks the TARDIS without.
I was like,
obviously, at this point, we didn't know that was to duplicate the TARDIS, so we were all sat there like, why would he use a big cartoon hammer to like whack the TARDIS for no reason?
I think with that as well, though, it's like, as time went on, it became more and more apparent that every single line of that leak was true. So I actually unlisted my video because it was made when they filmed it. Because I think it was like the runner on set or something watched them film it. Obviously, the runner didn't know that the TARDIS duplicated either, so they were just transcribing what they could hear. And obviously, that's when you then get a version of that leak. But yeah, I remember unlisting the video because I was like, as we got closer to November, I was like, okay, this is accurate. It's already spoiled. Let's not spoil it anymore. I can't believe this is accurate. But
in the end, though, I have to say the giggle is one of those. The more I think about its ending, the more I actually quite like it. At the time, I was a bit like bi-generation, or I'm not sure. Now I'm kind of like, it works for
I
what it
really
is.
like the idea of bi-generation. There's something about the scene in the TARDIS after.
Yeah, you've said this to me before. Yeah.
I really don't like it. I don't know what it is. The whole scene in the TARDIS where 15's talking to them. But I feel 15's characterization's a bit off from like both the writing and a little bit from shooting.
Well, I think he's
Tennant
really good
also pulls that bizarre face.
Yeah, like, there's that one face.
What's going on?
It always reminds me of the giraffe from Madagascar. You know, like that one.
Yeah. Like if
like
you know, you know. It's
the same facial expression. But like, yeah, with the bi-generation specifically, I'm kind of like, no, it works good. I think as well, like the scene, not the scene that you're on about in the TARDIS later on, but the scene on the helipad. I think Gat was great.
Yeah,
I think you're
he's so good.
Like, boom.
He's so good.
Doctor. Myth, Mel.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And the clapping, the hands, it's all like, that is the Doctor right there.
I have bi-generated.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But then I don't get how you go from that scene, which is, I think that unironically is my favourite scene Ncuti's ever performed as the Doctor.
It's one of them.
It's genuinely like a 10 out of 10 scene. Like, I love the bi-generation. But then you go into the TARDIS and suddenly his characterisation feels a little bit different. And the lines like, Sarah Jane is gone, can you believe that? Just feels so like I get why, and I love that Elizabeth Sladen's being respected, but it just doesn't feel real. Do you know what I mean? It feels like fan servicey.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It feels like the writer saying it, not the character.
Yeah. It takes me out of the story a bit. But
I think as well because some of the reference points are so random. It's like, sure, the Pandorica, that makes sense. The gods of gods of Ragnarok, sure.
Yeah.
Mavic Chen from Dalek's Master Plan? Why was that where your mind went? I don't know. I do overall like the giggle though. As I said, the Toymaker icon. I want him to come back. There we are.
Yeah.
Next one.
Next leak ties into what we just said actually.
Does it?
The 60th.
Let me have a look. David Tennant being the 14th Doctor. That was so insane way back. Do you remember? I don't know whether he'll watch this. He might. If anyone's still watching this by now, I salute you because we've been going for a while.
Shout
but yeah, Crispy Pro doing a video being like, psh, no way, he's going to be the 14th Doctor. How ridiculous would that be? There's no way they're going to do. And then they do exactly that.
I remember where I was. It's like you know how people always say like the big events if you like. I remember where I was when I first heard David Tennant would be the 14th Doctor. I was on a walk in the countryside. I'm pointing as if you can all see.
Yeah, the countryside is just off screen.
Just there. But I was on a walk and I remember it was an article by The Sun or something that was like David Tennant and Catherine Tate to return for the 60th anniversary specials. He's the 14th Doctor, 3 feature-length specials. I remember reading that and going, there's no way this is true, but that is a fantastic YouTube video title. And then legging it through the countryside, running through the fields, back home. I got the camera out and was like, hello YouTube, this is what we've heard. And there's no way it's true. But then as time went on, I remember, I don't know if we're going to expose anyone here. I don't think we are, because we won't mention any names, but I remember you got told by someone who was a COVID tester or something in London. I remember we were in a Discord call and someone had tested David Tennant for coronavirus just before filming, and then they'd gone to you going, oh my God, I've just COVID tested David Tennant, Catherine Tate, and for Doctor Who. It must be that they're back for Doctor Who. And I remember that was like the earliest sign we were like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
this might be real.
Well,
but
either
it's
they're
still-
back for Doctor Who, or it's just a very, very big coincidence. Like, I remember as well. Do you remember when that picture prior to Power of the Doctor released on Facebook of all the classic Doctors at that hotel?
Yes,
and everyone went,
yes.
"Hang on a minute."
Hang on. And then they were like, it's for a documentary.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then it was not for it. It was not, in fact, for a documentary. To be fair, there is one that I thought was fake as well, and it was the Davina McCall Christmas leak.
Oh
The
my
one about the
gosh.
goblins.
Yeah.
So I remember that leaking and being like, "There's no way they're having a Christmas tree full on Davina McCall and goblins running
No,
around."
this is the thing. That was around the time where, because it was connected with the 60th leak,
Yeah.
and all the info we'd heard, it was kind of apparent that the bi-generation was real. And I remember going, don't tell me that goblin leak.
Yeah.
And I specifically didn't read the goblin part. I'd known this stuff about the 60th, but I was like, I do not want to ruin the Christmas special.
Well, I covered it thinking it was obviously ridiculous, you know, because especially when people bring up like celebrity names that are going to be episodes, that's normally a giveaway to me that like, oh yeah, this is fake. So I was like, I covered it, not thinking much of it, and then it got taken down, and I was like,
there's a problem.
Sorry. Sometimes they do take them down if they're legitimate. Sometimes a leak becomes too widespread to the point where, you know, it's like shooting ducks in a barrel for them, I guess.
I think the only video leak that I've had taken down was the new TARDIS interior, because I remember when that dropped, there were so many videos, and I said in the video, because it's my rule for spoiling stuff for myself at least. Maybe I shouldn't do it for other people, but if it doesn't spoil the plot, I don't mind it. Like if it's like a costume or a prop or a thing that won't spoil the plot, it's like that's cool.
Yeah.
But I remember, the BBC were not happy with the TARDIS interior leak video. So apologies.
I don't think they were with anyone's, because I remember I did the thing of like just re-uploading it, but with the fan mock-ups. So like, the guys, sorry about it.
Genius.
I did, but I remember that happening. It's weird with TARDIS console rooms. They always with console
I
rooms.
remember the Jodie Whittaker TARDIS console room leaking, and it looked terrible. And then it came out on TV, and
it's still
I think this is my controversial take. Well, I think it looked pants in Series 11, but I really like it in Series 12 and 13. I think once it's got the good lighting and they removed one of the pillars, it looks great.
You know what I think helps? I think in Flux, when it's supposed to be like a dingy cave that's struggling to be alive, and you've got those bits dripping out of it and there's cobwebs everywhere, that, like, I almost see the vision more then, because it's supposed to be like a cave that's like deteriorating. You know what I mean? When it's Series 11 and it's all dark, and you've got Jodie be like, "Hello, I'm the Doctor," and you've got this really dark.
I didn't get how none of them tripped over either. Like, that room was so dark, I'd have fallen over the console.
I just don't know like why that was the choice for her Doctor specifically. Because when I think of Jodie's Doctor, I would imagine more of like, for example, like Matt Smith's first TARDIS, something very bright and sort of almost, like sort of like autism based, where you're pressing all the buttons and all this sort of stuff. But no, it's very kind of dark and kind of small. And
I think that's the thing. It works really well in Series 12 when it's got bright lighting. I think do
think it can get a bit oversaturated in Series 12, though. I think you have the reverse issue.
I like it. It matches Jodie.
Oh, really?
It's that energy. It's the so much boom, boom. Anyway, we'll move on to our next leak. Speaking of Jodie Whittaker and the Chris Chibnall era, the rumour from James Swan 11, not that he started this rumour, this is his suggestion for the video, that Chibnall has been sacked. Do you remember Chaos in Cardiff?
I do. I was actually there throwing the bricks
on the front lines. For context, Chaos in Cardiff was it a news article or just like a Reddit post?
I honestly don't
I think
remember.
It started as a Reddit post of people saying, like Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker had like a shouting match in public. Obviously, this didn't happen, but this is what it said. Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker had like a shouting match. She stormed off set. Chibnall refused to leave, and half-written scripts everywhere. And he was like, "I'm not doing any more." And it was called Chaos in Cardiff. Then it got picked up by the Sun newspaper, then another newspaper, and there were all these rumours that like Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall had like had a massive argument in the middle of Cardiff, and it just wasn't true. And then Chris Chibnall said on a podcast as well, he was like, we were all just sat there reading it going like, what? Like, what is this?
Yeah. I think it's always the case with Doctor Who, isn't it? Whenever anyone is showrunner or doctor, they're always on the verge of being sacked, or the show's always on the verge of being cancelled, or both. It's like, that's the universal rule, because obviously recently I remember like seeing people talk about like, you know, that one rumour that I did a video on it, that guy called like Mr. H something, who was like, oh, Gatwa's been fired for reasons.
Doctor Who fans are like perpetually against the showrunner. Like they're always, and if they don't like the showrunner, they usually don't like the cast. And the eras get reappraisal after they've come out, but when they're airing, people are so quick to be like, I don't like it. And if they don't like it, people start lying.
Era.
They're like, this person's horrible on set, and so much unnecessary.
There's like
drama.
No evidence, but in the end, it's kind of funny because no one hates Doctor Who more than Doctor Who fans. That's the truth of it. Like,
it is.
Because we just had like an hour-long rant about like season 1, and in the end, like it's funny because I think the difference though is that like we go in with an open mind and we'll say the bits we like. I think there's some people who thinks that anything any like showrunner makes is bad, and people will say that I'm like that with Chibnall. But even me, I will say, for example, I really love War of the Sontarans. I think Village of the Angels, Haunting of Villa Diodati is really good. I guess that one's not written by him, to be fair, but yeah, the point is in his era.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's like there's what a lot of fans seem to forget is they're people that write and make this stuff. I, as a creative myself, not to sound pretentious, obviously I've never written anything to the tier of getting like a fandom, but like it's not nice for people to just slate your work. What I do think though is really nice, and if people don't like it, like I remember what's his name, Jack Wolf did a review of one of my fan films years ago. And it was a terrible fan film. And I remember people like messaging me, and like some of the like fans and people who watch my channel were going like, he's slagging you off. And I watched the video and I was like, everything he's saying is basically accurate. Like obviously he was making certain assumptions which were a bit like, well, no. But the criticisms of the media itself, I think that's completely fine. Because if you don't like it, you're allowed to say. I just think it's when people are so vitriolic and horrible with it, it's like, at the end of the day, the people writing this and acting this are still people. Like, there's good in everything, there's bad in everything.
I think the other thing as well is when it devolves from criticism to like sound bites and catchphrases. Like I am more than willing to have a conversation with someone who didn't like, say, for example, season 1 or whatever. But if you just go, Doctor Who's dead, died with such and such, get woke, go broke, whatever. If that's all you have to add to the conversation, I don't have much time for that. If you want to have a debate, I'm happy to facilitate. Well, maybe not, all the time, but I'm saying like, if you want to have an intelligent conversation, there's space for that. But I think what annoys me is when people just regurgitate the same phrases they've heard other people say. It's like you're not actually doing any critical thought yourself there. You're just parroting something you've already heard by someone else, while simultaneously then calling anyone who doesn't agree with you a sheep. Welcome to the internet, everyone. I think the thing is, we have interesting perspectives on this. It's completely different because Russell is, the head of like one of the biggest shows in the country. We are little YouTubers who talk about the things that he makes. But I think when you are a public figure, quote unquote, to a certain extent, you kind of you sympathize more with that, I feel, because I've had people be online saying I'm like the devil incarnate. You know, I've
And
had
they're
that.
right. They are right.
Yeah, they are right.
You're a horrible man.
I actually, me and Lucifer, you know, we had a chat the other day. But no,
Shout
like,
out. Let's get him on the podcast.
shout out Lucy. No, but like, I get that it doesn't feel nice, does it? You know, when like people are like barraging you, particularly when it's over something that either you didn't even say or was not in any way your intention or whatever it is. So I do have more sympathy for that these days. Like, for example, obviously, some things that Russell has been saying, I'm sort of like, not helping yourself here, Russell, I'll be honest. You know, you leave that. But there's also some things where I'm like, that's not really what he said, though. And you're sort of deliberately going out your way to...
I think an example of that is the whole thing of the Doctor. There's this quote that's been attributed to Russell of like, the Doctor said the sonic screwdriver shouldn't be used like a gun. Which, if you trace it back, he didn't really say it as bad as people make out.
No.
The internet's a mess.
He was more so saying that like, he was worried, well, not worried, but he's like, the way the Doctor points it can be used more like a weapon. And the thing is, that's all he was saying. Not that, all the old Sonics look like a gun. And what's mad about this is that I was thinking about this the other day. Doctor Who Confidential, they say the same thing about Matt Smith in Cold Blood. There is a bit in Confidential where they say the reason, if you go back and watch Cold Blood, you know when he's disabling all the Silurian guns? That bit in like the caves where he's disabling all of them so he can run away. The reason they deliberately have him pointing it upwards while he's doing that is so that it doesn't look like he's pointing a weapon or a gun. So this isn't even something new or something that Russell only has said. It was said in the Moffat era as well. Where was the outrage then? There wasn't any.
You gotta love the internet, really. Yeah. It's a wonderful place. But
should we read the last one?
We'll go back. There's still a few more.
Okay, there's a few more.
So Frank Buddy says it's always going to be that the BBC just out and out announced Sim coming back in Series 10. Not a leak, but just insane. Yeah. Why did they do that? I love Series 10. Series 10 is my favourite series of the show, and that master reveal, John Sim, he's one of my favourite villains ever, and you ruined it. Why?
Because the thing is, right, like with what's the character called that he plays before he's revealed to be the master? What's he called?
Razor, I think.
Razor.
Mr. Razor.
Razor, he sort of looks like Johnson, but if I didn't know that he was, I'd sort of be like, you look a bit like Johnson, but I wouldn't immediately go, it's the master in disguise necessarily, because the makeup is well done in that story, you know, like it is covered quite well. But because I knew the master was coming back, as soon as you see Razor, you go, that's the master, isn't it?
Well, see, this is the thing. Luckily for me, I say luckily, it was a terrible viewing experience, but I was at my uncle and auntie's like party. Once again, there's a theme with this podcast. It was a barbecue, and I was sat away from the family on an iPad. I was sat away from the family on an iPad in a dark room because I was not going to miss that episode. But because the screen was terrible, like it was an iPad mini. And it, like the screen brightness was whatever. It was the peak of summer, sun shining through the window. I could barely see, and I only clocked about 5 minutes before the reveal. So for the entire of the episode, I was like, "Oh, this is a new character." And then, but obviously, when as soon as you see him pop up on a big screen, you're like, "Well, that's John Sim." But I think there is a leak. I don't know if you remember. It was leaked. There were pictures of him and Missy from like way off in the distance, but only the back of them. And everybody thought they were going to recast the Roger Delgado master. Because obviously from the back, all you can see is like grey hair, that costume. He had his hands behind his back.
It's a lot more of a classic costume, and he's got a like goatee in that one.
Exactly.
As well,
everyone was like, But then it became apparent as time went on, and then the BBC just out and out announced it. Why? He was coming back. But yeah, it's such a shame they announced it.
Yeah, I get with some things why you've got to announce them because they are out in public, but I think sometimes like enough people, the people who are going to know it could be people who are like camping out at set, whatever, they can know. But like for the general public, they wouldn't have known. So you could have still kept it under wraps. With some things, I get that you've got to announce them. Like, for example, Tennant is the lead of the show for the 60th. And he's going to be out doing a lot of public filming. You can't really hide that, so you've got to sort of announce it. But yeah, I don't know why they announced that. Actually, speaking of Series 10, before we get on to the next leak, didn't you leak the first Doctor being in Twice Upon a Time? Wasn't that one of your earliest videos?
I was a genius, right? I think it's my first sort of theory/leak video.
Yeah.
But we'd seen, I think it was 3 or so weeks before Twice Upon a Time, we'd seen a filming image of the two TARDISes together. So we kind of knew that the first Doctor was coming back. Because also, I went to the Doctor Who experience, and the first Doctor's console was gone. And everyone then was like, okay, what's going on? So there were lots of murmurings, and there was pictures. It was basically confirmed that the first Doctor was coming back in some sense. And as soon as I watched the World Enough in Time, I just, my head, like that, because I'm a writer at heart. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I know how you end that scene. He is in the same place as the 10th planet. The first Doctor's going to come in and interrupt the regeneration. And I recreated it with action figures. Before the episode was even out, I was like, I know exactly that shot of him regenerating in the snow. I know exactly what's happening there. I made this video and I posted it to YouTube. And it got like 400 views at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow. And then the episode came out. And obviously everyone then types in, First Doctor shows up at the end of it. And I checked my phone, and it had gone up to 24,000 views, which for the time, I had like 400 subscribers. I remember just being sat in my living room going, it was so much fun. But yeah, I predicted that. So that's my claim.
I had a similar thing, although it wasn't as public as that because it was on Google Plus. I feel like
shout out to Google Plus.
I have to explain because there might be some people who are young enough to not even remember that Google Plus was everything. Briefly, Google Plus was like Google's attempt at like a Facebook/Twitter-esque sort of thing where you type in random thoughts and there'd be like people who could reply and stuff. Anyway, I remember someone putting out a Google Plus.
Can you hear that screeching?
No? What is
I can hear my younger brother has just got back from, I think, I can't remember what school year he's in, but I think he's on his Xbox. And I just heard 3 or 4 distinct.
Nice.
So apologies if anyone heard that. The mic may not have picked it up, but
shout out to
carry
your
on.
brother.
Yeah,
No,
not shout out. You're disturbing the recording.
No, so I remember seeing like someone post on Google Plus. What do you think is going to happen in the Series 9 finale? Or no, it was about like Face the Raven and Clara dying in Face the Raven, and I replied saying, I bet you any money in Hellbent or in the series finale, she comes back to life. She comes back in the series finale. And everyone in that thread said, oh, you're stupid. That's obviously not going to happen. Oh, you wouldn't do that. No, it's too predictable. Comes to Hellbent. First scene of the story. Jenna Coleman's there smiling at him. I told you. I knew I was right.
I knew it.
I think at that point as well, I was like getting a little bit Moffated out. Now I'm like, Moffat, we love you. But back then I was kind of like, I can predict where this is going.
Yeah, you know where this is going.
But yeah, so that's my equivalent to that, I guess. Although everyone just hated me for saying it at the time.
They hate me because I speak the truth. Yeah. Our next suggestion from Jeevan John is Arthur Darvill being the Master is always one that's stuck in his mind. Everyone's been the Master. I remember there was that thumbnail. You know, the like iconic thumbnail of like Rory one side, the Johnson Master together with the line in the middle. Yeah, iconic.
Yeah. No, I remember exactly the way. It took me a second, but I was like, yeah. It's clicked in my brain.
I wasn't really on the Doctor Who space at the time when that happened because I sort of joined Doctor Who Internet like Series 7 era. But yeah, I remember everyone. It's so infamous. Everyone.
I think that one is one of the ones that makes more sense, though.
Yeah.
Because he is a character that dies constantly and just randomly comes back. And is constantly a paradox. So, like, if there was anyone that was secretly the Master,
it would be him.
It sort of makes sense. You know, obviously it wasn't. And I'm glad it wasn't because it would have been such a weird left turn.
I don't know. It would have been cool. The biggest shame of the Matt Smith era is him not getting his own master face-off. I think him and Sasha. I want to see the.
Then again, I also
versus
do
the
quite
Sasha
like,
master.
with hindsight, that we had an era that was just master free. Because I've said this before, I'm a little bit. I know you're not. I'm a little bit mastered out. I know. I'm a little bit like, because they've been so prominent in the last two eras, like Missy and Dewan were like so much part of those eras that I
The
think
master is like an essential. I don't love Doctor Who at its peak, apart from Series 4, unless the master's there. The master, Missy.
I mean, to be fair, with Series 4, you
is
only have to wait
just
like a year and he comes back anyway.
perfect. Perfect. It's so good. The dynamic, and then you need to give the master a character arc and a character growth. And if you want to see that, you'll want to check out Doctor Who Echoes Destiny, a fan film coming to you December this year. Well, at least part of it is. Shameless plug. But yeah, we'll move on to the next leak.
Yes. Oh, right, yes, me. Sorry. I think we've been recording.
I think this is going to be like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, it's going to be long. Right, yes. This one is from Rory Stock, I believe. Name of the Doctor's twist nearly got out once people got access to the Blu-ray early. Yes, this is true. Name of the Doctor, the episode Name of the Doctor was on the Doctor Who Series 7 Blu-ray, I think, in the US, before it had aired in the UK. So there were like about 20,000, I think, Doctor Who fans who'd seen the ending, and they just had to sort of politely email and be like, please don't.
Wasn't it a personal email from Stephen Moffat or something?
Apparently,
He sent out a personal message to all these people that got the Blu-ray early and was just like, look, the events of Name of the Doctor, there's some big plot twist at the end. Do not spoil it, please.
Yeah.
And luckily, nobody did. I mean,
I wonder if that would happen now.
No,
right?
no, no way.
I don't think it would it?
It would be everywhere immediately.
Yeah.
And we'd probably be to blame.
Yeah, we probably would. Sorry.
No, we wouldn't. If it was a plot spoiler like that, we'd know about it because it'd be all over Twitter.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't make a big
I think if
deal
they specifically said a Blu-ray has been sent out early with an episode, don't tell anyone what the plot is, I wouldn't. I think that's like a line I would cross, you know?
Yeah.
The line's got to be somewhere, and I think them going, oh yeah, we've sent the episode out early by accident, that's definitely like a line that I wouldn't cross, just because I'd feel like a bit of a...
It's just, that's the thing, there's no point spoiling the plot. I get other things, but the plot, no. The plot is sacred.
Because I think things like public filming are sort of fair game, because like,
it's
they're in public, you know? Like, what are you going to do? I think Reddit is one of those things where I think it is, to a certain extent, fair game, so long as you're not under the impression that, like, so, like, unless you've got some insider knowledge so you know that it's accurate, then I think it's a bit dubious, you know, if you're, like, releasing stuff that is accurate and then, like, covering it. I think that would be a bit like, oh, there's a bit of a moral grey area there, I guess. But, like, for me, with the Reddit stuff, it was always, I don't know which bit's true, I don't know which bit's not, I'm just a guy. So
I'm just the middleman.
Yeah, I'm just Ken, you know, just there.
But we'll move on to our next one from the wonderful Jamie Radcliffe, who's actually on this podcast at some point in the future, so stay tuned for that. But Jodie Whittaker's ginger cat called Percy. Well, I remember that so clearly, and I remember it coming from Ace Creeper.
Yeah. This comes back to the Ace Creeper days. Yeah. And I was so good at it as well, because he was at the proms, but he left by the time that, like, we were done. I think he really, like, he watched the proms and then left, and he missed us. And I wanted to say, like, Percy the Catman, unironically, is one of the reasons, like, part of, I think, the leaks exist in the way that they did, or, like, early Tharries existed in the way that it did, because stuff like Percy the Cat, I looked at that and went, whoa. So interesting. I wonder if it actually is going to... It didn't.
It sounds real. Like,
it sounds
especially
reasonable
for the 13th Doctor, I could have imagined getting a cat. Like, that's the
and I also remember the leaked title for Series 11, Episode 1 being The Woman in Blue, which, to be fair, it wasn't, but it's not that far off.
Yeah.
You know, like... And, like, it's... In spirit, it's similar. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. And I think that was kind of where I was like, oh, this would be really interesting. I only really acted on it with Flux, I guess.
Separate to Percy the cat, I've got a story which I'm considering telling. I can't remember whether I've told you before. It's just
I have no idea
hilarious
what this is now.
about Ace Creeper. He probably doesn't even know this story is going to be told, so I won't go into specifics. But
I think I know the story.
do you remember when we made YouTube Rewind?
Yes. Yeah.
So we made YouTube Rewind, and George played a wonderful little cameo in it. He was absolutely lovely. He sends over the footage. He's lovely, whatever. And then me and my friends, who we film Doctor Who fan stuff normally. They're not Doctor Who people. They're not online. Let's call him John. Right. John was doubling as Ace Creeper on that day, so he's on the phone. So I put in his contact, I change it to George Sheard so that we can film me ringing George Sheard. What I didn't realise is I accidentally left his phone number in the video. Now, you can't find it anymore. It's been taken off. But his phone number, my friend's phone number, was in the video under the name George Sheard. So people started to ring it thinking that it was George. Now, the first two calls were just random people going, "Hi, is this George?" And obviously, my mate, John, is not in the Doctor Who fan space, right? So he didn't really know what was happening. But he's like, "I've just had two people ringing me saying I'm George." And I was like, "What do you mean? You're George?" None of us had a clue, because this was like when we filmed it, there was a month gap. So as soon as the video came out, he just started getting these calls. Then this one guy, who I shall not name, but he's a semi-big person within the Doctor Who community, rings the number. And I was there. This was New Year's Day. We were all, there was a group of about 15 of us, and he rings the number, and John goes, "Everybody quiet. This is going to be someone asking if I'm called George." He picks up the phone, and this guy, really aggressively down the phone, is like, George, mate, George." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm George, you're right." And he was like, "George, you realise you've leaked your number. The confused Adipose has leaked your number." And he was like, "No, he hasn't." And he was like, yeah, he has. "Look, George, this is of vital importance. He's leaked your number." And I started clocking on who this guy was. I'm not going to say who it was, but this guy was going like, "George, you've leaked your number." And John just kept playing up to it. I was like, Stop. And he was just like, "I have not leaked my number." And then they started shouting at each other down the phone. And he was going like, "I am George's manager, in fact. And the fact that you're harassing George and calling George." So John was pretending to be George's manager. So it goes down this rabbit hole, right? Then I was like, just hang up. So John hangs up the phone. 5 minutes later, the same guy rings back. And we're like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And he goes, are you George's manager?" And obviously John goes, "Yeah, I am." Then George's voice comes down the line and goes, "You're not my manager. Who the hell are you?" And everyone, it was in a room of like 15 people. Everyone was just absolutely howling with laughter, but we were on mute. So George and this other guy had no idea there were 15 people listening in. And I was like, "Right, just stop the call. Stop the call here. We're going down a rabbit hole." But John keeps going. John is like, "No, I am your manager, George." And then he starts telling George down the phone.
Darth Vader.
He was like, "Stop impersonating George. This is incredibly disrespectful." And then just arguing. And obviously it was all jokes, and people were like George wasn't taking it seriously or anything. But it just got down this bizarre rabbit hole of George was on the phone with this other guy who was then on the phone to my mate, who was then sharing it with all of us. And it just became this shouting match of, "You're not George. Yes, I am George. You're not George." It's an absolutely bizarre situation. But if you're watching this, George, apologies. This is my formal apology for...
I want to say
John's
I had
name.
nothing to do with this.
It was all Tharries. Tharries is John.
I am removing myself completely. No.
Oh, it was so funny though.
YouTube Rewind was entirely confused by the post-production. I take no credit. Even though he was in it, I had nothing to do with it.
To be fair, I did most of the work on that project.
Do you want to take credit for all of YouTube Rewind?
Not all of it, but we'll move on to our next. From Osh. Shout out to Osh. Osh was actually there. Yeah, when this event happened, Osh was there. But go on.
Oh, was he? Was he? Okay. Let me get it up. I keep getting it off to look at you. There we are. Master's prop box.
This is one of my favourites.
Oh, this is so fantastic. Iconic. This was wonderful. What I love, I don't know whether you'll be able to find it. You know, Jack Reeves, he did a really funny TikTok, YouTube short thing where he was playing Chris Chibnall and an interview, and an interviewer interviewing Chris Chibnall, who was like, oh, Series 13, Mr. Chibnall, can you tell us anything? And he was like, no, my series is secret, nothing can get out. If anything does, it would break the internet. And he walks in as the guy with a box going, hey, Mr. Chibnall, where do you want the Masters props? And it's just like, I don't know whether you can find it, but that had me like laughing for ages. Because it was so funny, because around that time, right, Chibnall was known for being Mr. Secret. He didn't like any... He was like the inverse of, you know what we were saying with Moffat earlier with like the Master? He was the opposite of that. He was like, no, nothing, no information, nothing. And then you go from that to this guy just casually walking around with like the Master's props on a box.
It was so good as well though, because it's the picture of the guy who he clearly doesn't know the storm he's just unleashed online. And he's just stood there with a box that says Master's props. And I was... Someone who is in an unnamed member of the cast of Echo's Destiny was actually he was a student in Cardiff and he went down to watch the filming and he was telling me, look, I've just seen a box of like loads of like little people and it said Masters on the side. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, nice. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
And then that picture crops up on Twitter and I was like, okay, that seals the deal. This is real. And It was so... I love it. The picture's just iconic. It's just a bloke stood there with a big box turned towards all the cameras. Master's prop box. I wonder who the villain of that episode could be.
Yeah, that was
iconic.
Hilarious. Like, it's... Doctor Who is great, isn't it?
I want to know who decided it would be a good idea when you're working on like a top secret show. Like Bradley Walsh.
At least have a code name for the character.
Bradley Walsh has talked about like when we got the first scripts for Series 11, it was like an MI5 mission, and someone's like, right, mate, just write the main villain's name on that box and stand it outside the filming locations. Absolutely wild. But that brings us on to our final leak of the day. Now, this one I picked. Sorry to everyone whose comments we didn't read.
It's all Joe's fault.
It's all my fault. It is. But, from Connor Crilly, 16, the Dalek drone and bronze Daleks filming the Civil War scene on the bridge for Revolution of the Daleks. That is what kicked off this era of my YouTube channel, I think. Because I remember making a video on that and it got a lot of views and I was like,
This is it. Yeah, no, I remember like using that Dalek in like a thumbnail for like months afterwards. I have a story about that. So I remember when that happened, I was slated to go to a play with the school that I was at, because I did drama at A level. So like one of the things we had to do was go and see a play, and I was like, I can't go yet. They put out
this leaked Dalek. I'm not going anywhere.
They put pictures out of these Daleks on the bridge fighting, and it's like Dark Civil War. You can still find the video to this day of like very hurriedly. Obviously back then I didn't show my face. Just sort of talking and like having the vortex, and then the pictures of the Daleks being like, oh my god, like you can see here, there's a new design and all this. I mean, all the while I'm like trying to get ready at the same time, but you're like, I've got to go and do this thing. But I was like, no, I need to do this first. This is important. This is what matters. My education, who cares? My life, career, Daleks on a bridge. That's what matters. And I regret nothing. About that. The play was quite good, though. Although, to be fair, the main thing I remember about that, I don't remember.
All I remember is it was good.
I remember it was a decent play, but I kept thinking about the new Daleks, to be honest.
we went to London as a drama class, which is
yeah.
correlation there. I think part of my leak video with that Dalek is me going, I'm really tired because I was just in London, and we were on the coach, and it was basically the cast of Echo's Destiny. It was like Ellie, Elliot, Emma, Artie, all that lot. We'd been in London, and I remember the pictures coming through while I was on the coach, and I was like, "Oh, leaks!" And then the video got made and did really well, and here we are today. What a nice full circle way to round up this podcast.
Yeah, I feel like we've been trying to round it up for the last half an hour. And
I feel like this is the longest video I think I have ever recorded.
I think it's because we talk a lot anyway. As in, we as people, we talk to each other. Contrary to popular belief, we do actually like each other off the camera. We don't actually despise each other completely. No, I think that's probably why.
Excuse me.
Oh my god,
I've gone out of focus.
Oh my god, there he is. Just quickly, a final story to end that off. Same thing happened to me. Well, I wasn't on a trip, but when Shooty Gatwa got announced. That was so random. I was just at my dad's, and I had no recording equipment or anything. All I had was obviously my phone, and obviously the tweet being Shooty Gatwa is the doctor. The thing is, no one knew how to pronounce his name at the time, so you can go back and see just a video filmed in my dad's sort of kitchen area, being like, "Hey guys,
breaking news.
There's a new doctor apparently," and I recorded it before it was the official announcement, so it was just the 2 hearts plus blue box thing. So I was like, I think this is the new doctor, and he's Shooty Gatwa. I was like,
not quite the right.
But the thing is, at the time, obviously, no one knew what the pronunciation was.
I did. I sorted it out before making my video.
In fairness, Shooty Gatwa himself only
that's true.
Very recently, so technically no one knew.
I remember as well, though, where I was, because I was at uni. And we were in the edit suite. This was first year. We were editing our final major project of that year. And I remember I got on my phone and I was like, and then two people next to me were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, and they were like, "This is the guy from Sex Education." And I was like, "He's the doctor." And they were like, "It's cool." And then I filmed a TikTok, which is just me and my friend Natasha going, "Knock, knock, who's there? Doctor. Doctor Who?" And that's still up on TikTok. Nice. Then I tried to go live. So there's this live stream of me running through my uni campus with a little armada of Doctor Who fans. And we're trying to discuss Shooty's casting, but it was glitching so much. Then I just settled for making a video. And I made the video. It was so much fun. Because I remember as well where I was when Russell was announced was coming back, and we just got back off a trip to an editing house with uni, and then back post, and the joy of Russell's coming back. Yeah. Because also, it was at a time where the show could have, in theory, been cancelled.
Yep, completely.
There were all these leaks and rumours. We knew Chibnall and Jodie were leaving. We didn't know anyone was taking over, and it was like, where's this all going? But... we made it.
No, when Russell was announced, I just moved into this, literally just moved into this office space to the point where I hadn't even had time to plug my microphone in yet. It was that new, and I was also heading out in a bit as well. And I remember seeing the announcement and going, "Oh, whoa, whoa," and then I had to I opened OBS without thinking, right? So the video that is still up. Me reacting to the announcement of Russell T Davies, one of the biggest announcements in recent Doctor Who memory, is me with the webcam audio, and I sound like I'm underwater, but that's because I literally just gotten in here. It's completely go back to the video, the wall is completely bare. Nothing there, which feels weird now, given how much has occupied it since. But weirdly, most Doctor Who announcements never happen at a convenient time for me. There's very few.
For me, they're usually convenient. I think I'm just a lucky man, but they're usually when I've got nothing on, and it's like, boom, video, let's go.
Yeah.
But in saying that, the next big announcement, I'll be busy. So anyway, we'll bring this to a conclusion, because I said that 10 minutes ago. Thank you very much for joining me on this edition of the As of Yet Unnamed podcast. That could be the name, As of Yet Unnamed.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
No. Has it been done, though?
Possibly. Maybe by Vinder and Bell from Flux, As of Yet Unnamed podcast.
Yeah, when they were at, when she was at sex education school. That series was as well.
It was.
We sacrificed 2 Should You Get With Doctor episodes for the worst series of sex education, and I'm not over it.
Yeah. I'm trying to Google it, but it's asking me if I'm a robot. There's As Yet Unnamed London Theatre podcast.
Okay.
There's not As Of Yet. Okay. It's a work in progress. Maybe that's the title, maybe not. But thank you very much for watching.
No problem.
I hope you did enjoy. I wasn't thanking you, I was thanking you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Know your place. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Thomas/Tharries, for joining us on this fantastic podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we'll bring this to a conclusion. Goodbye!
Bye!
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 Oh, there's 3 hours of my life I'm never getting back.
Keep that in.
Thank you very much for watching this week's edition of the Confused Adipose podcast. If you did enjoy, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe and share. Also, check out my Patreon for exclusive videos, early updates, and so much more. Thank you very much.